Have any questions about your prescriptions or over-the-counter medications?
Giant Eagle Pharmacist will be on call with the answers to all your medical questions.
Phone the Giant Eagle Pharmacist Day, Wednesday from 1 to 7, here on KDKA TV 2.
Mail order divorce, today, live at 5.
Good morning from Los Angeles. I'm Paula Zahn.
Smith in New York. This is a CBS News special report. The People versus O.J. Simpson, the verdict. Paula?
Here is what has happened and what is happening in the O.J. Simpson trial in a lightning-fast decision. The jurors in the O.J. Simpson case have spoken, but right now only they know the verdict. That sealed verdict will be read aloud today in Judge Lance Ito's courtroom. Sandra Hughes is standing by at the L.A. County Courthouse with the latest. Good morning. How many folks are camped out there now?
Well, quite a few, Paula. As light illuminates the scene here, much is being revealed. First of all, there are barricades in front of the criminal courthouse. No traffic is being allowed to drive back and forth in front of the court building. Lines of people formed as early as 4 a.m. this morning because that's as close as they could get to the building. You're seeing some of those lines right now. Earlier, you saw the mad rush of people. Actually, when they dropped the police line, people rushed toward the front door of the courthouse. Some are here just to take in the scene. Others are actually hoping for a seat so they can see and hear the verdict after yesterday's stunning announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, while we were taking our brief recess, Mrs. Robertson advised me that you buzzed 3 times and indicated that after receiving the verdict forms that you have reached a verdict in this case. Is that correct, Madam Foreman? All right.
Defense attorneys were quick to react.
No jury has ever convicted an innocent man this quickly.
Well, it's a very quick and kind of surprising verdict at this point. I have no inside information, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
Ron Goldman's family was described as anxious.
They've asked me to ask you, the press, if you could leave and let them be alone with their thoughts.
Earlier, jurors had asked for a readback of limousine driver Alan Park's testimony. In March, Park told jurors he did not see Simpson's Ford Bronco parked outside the estate when he arrived at 10:22 p.m. Prosecutors theorized the murders occurred around 10:15 p.m. A court reporter read Park's testimony.
Question, was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by at about 10:22? Answer, I didn't see it. Question, and you were looking at that curb, were you not? Answer, yes.
But jurors appeared to pay special attention to his testimony about seeing Cato Kalin walking from behind his room after hearing the thumps on his wall.
A white male walked from behind the house area on a pathway, and he had a flashlight in his hand, and he stopped. He stopped before he got to the driveway.
Limo driver Alan Park was concerned about the impression that his testimony was pivotal.
Well, I sure hope nobody makes judgment on me that it was me that, if he is guilty, that I put him away. I hope nobody thinks that. I just happened to be at the right place at the wrong time.
Legal experts could only speculate as to what the early verdict meant.
All this means is that the jurors really had heard enough and made up their minds even before they got into the jury room. And all it took was a simple polling to see that they all agreed.
Defense attorney Carl Douglas, who was in court for the surprise announcement, said he was stunned, but would not talk about O.J. Simpson's reaction. Now, in their hurried pace, the jury forewoman actually left the sealed verdict inside the deliberation room. Judge Ito joked that was not a very good place for it to be left. It was retrieved, and it will be revealed at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Paula?
The Los Angeles Police Department has said it does not expect any major problems after this verdict is announced. Nevertheless, it has a lot of precautions in place. How obvious are those precautions this morning from where you stand?
Well, as I said before, the front of the courthouse is barricaded. I have seen, obviously, an extra presence of police officers. In fact, yesterday, as I was coming down to the courthouse, I saw some police on horseback, which I have never seen in downtown Los Angeles. Their presence is here, and it is known. Paula?
Sandra Hughes reporting from the L.A. County Courthouse. Thank you very much. Simpson defense attorney Alan Dershowitz says he is cautiously pessimistic and preparing for the worst. But speaking in Boston last night, Dershowitz said it is difficult to read anything into the jury's surprisingly quick deliberations.
We have to wait and see What it does show is that the jury obviously made up its mind really before the deliberations or very shortly after they got their verdict sheets.
Dershowitz says he spent the night considering points for a future appeal just in case of a conviction. As the city of Los Angeles waits for the Simpson verdict to be read, police are gearing up for any possible trouble. James Hattori is here with more on that. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Paula. Los Angeles police are on alert this morning. Extra forces on duty. They say they're not expecting problems, but they hope that as this controversial and often inflammatory trial comes to an end, there will be none.
Still, Los Angeles police are on alert this morning with plans, they say, to deal with whatever happens.
I feel very confident that our city is totally prepared for any occasion.
It was just 2 years ago when Los Angeles erupted into flames after the acquittal of officers in the Rodney King beating case. Officials concede the recently released comments of Detective Mark Furman may have heightened racial tensions here. But even African-American community leaders say the Rodney King incident involved more hot-button issues than O.J. Simpson's case.
Obviously, there are different opinions between blacks and whites about his innocence or guilt, but I've never expected that there would be a whole big a replay of 1992.
For now, there's just anticipation of what the Simpson jury decided.
Mine was made up that, I hate to say it, but O.J., you know, it all points to him.
I hope it's not guilty.
You hope it's not guilty? Why?
Because I don't think he is, and there's too much reasonable doubt.
Again, no one is expecting any problems, yet just to be sure, community leaders are out in the community, talking to people and keeping their ears to the ground. Paula?
James Hattori, thanks so much. CBS News will have live continuing coverage of the O.J. Simpson verdict, expected at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll be with you till noon Eastern Time, and then Dan Rather will be taking over for the rest of the day. And tonight, Dan will also anchor a special live edition of 48 Hours on the Simpson verdict, beginning at 8 p.m. There are 12 jurors who know exactly what the verdict is in the O.J. Simpson case, and the rest of the world is waiting to hear what they have decided. The speed of their decision after such a long and complicated case has stunned just about everyone involved in the trial and everyone who has watched it from afar. Attorney Kristen Jeanette Myers of Court TV is here with us in Los Angeles, along with our consultant, former prosecutor Greg Garrison. Welcome back.
Good morning.
We have just learned that champagne was sent to the jurors last night. Does that mean anything at all? What were they celebrating?
It could mean something not so terrific for the prosecution, but I think it's important to remember that these jurors have been sequestered for over 8 months, and naturally they're going to have feelings about leaving each other, and so it's possible that was just a way of unwinding, but it's true, the reports are that there was a party of sorts and that champagne was ordered.
Although we hear Alan Dershowitz, a member of the defense team, saying he was cautiously pessimistic about what the verdict might be.
The truth is everybody on both sides of that courtroom is cautiously pessimistic. The bravado of a couple of the lead counsel on the defense team is just that. It's the stiff upper lip, you know, we're going to be fine drill, but let me tell you that there are about 8 or 10 hearts that are just right here. You breathe every time whenever your heart moves down enough, you can get some air through that windpipe, you take a breath. Nobody's going to breathe well until that verdict is in and they've had a chance to absorb it for a little while. So Professor Dershowitz says what is the truth out of everybody. In fact, you don't know. You always think of what you didn't do, whichever side you're on, and you're thinking, oh, I should have done this, and what if I could have just done that? And boy, if I could just play one more thing over again.
It seems to me, though, this jury has defied conventional wisdom since day one. Why is this jury so misunderstood? And you know, when you hear the expectations of what polls show, you know, the majority of white Americans feel that O.J. Simpson is guilty, and the majority of African Americans feel that he's an innocent man.
And so the logic would go, because 9 of the 12 jurors are African American, then it's likely they would vote not guilty. But I think that might be a false thought process for this reason. The African Americans who are polled, who believe O.J. Simpson is not guilty in the country, have been privy to a lot of evidence and a lot of talk outside of court, and particularly the entire Furman tapes, that have helped them shape their decision. And it may be a political decision, and they may be comfortable with that, or it may be based on evidence that wasn't admitted. But this jury has been sequestered.
Let us talk about how important that evidence was that the jury never got to see. What was left out in your judgment that would have maybe shaped this jury's decision in a different way?
What I think was left out was what needed to be left out. And among all of my criticisms of Lance Ito, I have not said that he failed to call a good game. He has called the balls and strikes the right way throughout. And the things that didn't get in, for example, Furman's explanations of planting evidence in other cases, awful, terrible thing to hear.
You didn't think they were at all relevant?
No, they're not relevant. They clearly are not. The judge is right in the middle of the fairway with those things, because the California rules of evidence make it very clear there's got to be some factual foundation, and there was none. He did a hard thing because, let me tell you, they were in his face about it, and they wanted anything they could do to get things going. And why? Look at the polls. That's exactly why. We do not convict people in the court of public opinion. That's why we got rules of evidence.
Can you convince us this morning, though, that none of this information seeped through to these jurors through pillow talk, which has been a big concern of the prosecution all along?
There were conjugal visits for jurors who wanted to partake of them on Friday nights for 5 hours. Now, dismissed jurors have talked about being worried that those visits were bugged, that they were being taped. There was a time when they were losing jurors so rapidly it was almost like an inquisition. And Michael Knox, the ex-juror, talks about wondering who would be next. I think that it's possible some comments were exchanged between the jurors and their spouses, but I don't think a full-blown conversation and what you don't know about the Furman tapes and on is likely. It's not something we can count on in terms of trying to figure out how they reached this decision. The other thing is, they can't talk about that in the jury room. You can't come in and say, well, my spouse told me during conjugals that Mark Furman said he planted evidence in other cases.
No, but you can clearly internalize that and keep that in mind when you're finally offering your vote.
It's an imperfect program. Nobody ever said it was going to be perfect. And the longer you let these trials go, back to the judge again, the longer you attenuate the proceedings, the more porous one has to be fearful that they will become. Another reason to have gone 6 days, and another reason to have gotten done in a hurry.
The judge gave the jury very specific instructions, and that's what we're supposed to keep in mind when they came to their decision. How hard is that to do in this case when you know that the impact of a verdict one way or the other is going to be tremendous?
Well,
are you thinking about that as a juror?
I don't think so. I think that they do an awfully good job. We vaccinate these people over and again. They hear this admonition, they hear it, and they hear it. And I know from watching, my own experience in high-profile cases, at the beginning, they're peeking over there to see who that famous person is, and pretty soon they kind of quit a little bit, and pretty soon they're paying attention to the witness stand if the trier of fact or the presenter of fact is doing his job. And I believe one of the reasons why you guys keep talking about defying conventional wisdom is mostly baloney. Conventional wisdom is what your tummy says this morning, or what some nutcase pollster decided was true about 1,500 people he asked. Jurors are a very special breed of cat. They have sworn an oath. They take it very seriously, and when it gets down to time to make a decision about somebody's life, they don't guess them into prison. They let them go if they're not sure. Well, and there's nothing wrong with conventional wisdom. Is not wisdom. It's foolishness.
But it's reasonable to think that jurors might spend more than 3 hours if they were going to convict someone of double homicide. I mean, I think it's
spent the weekend.
Is that what F. Lee Bailey?
I think it's reasonable to think that they would, even if they were all sure, just go over it one more time in light of the fact that they're sending a man to prison for the rest of his life and taking away the second parent of 2 children, as Johnny Cochran pointed out.
I think you both have made it quite clear there is no conventional wisdom in this case.
8 months.
And we will all be continuing to guess over the next several hours, and of course be bringing you the final results a little bit later on this morning. Thanks to Kristen Jeanette Myers of Court TV and CBS News consultant Greg Garrison. I don't think you're a nutcase anyway. You just have those nutcases to rely on.
No, I'm glad you feel that way.
You guys are our experts. We have much more ahead on the Simpson verdict, including discussions with reporters who have not missed a minute in the courtroom throughout this case. And coming up next, we're going to talk with the attorney who has counseled and consoled Nicole Brown Simpson's family throughout the trial. We'll be back.
If you've been hurt in an accident, here's why you should call attorney Edgar Snyder.
Many times people hurt in accidents are overwhelmed by insurance company paperwork. If you sign the wrong paper, you may give up your rights forever to collect money for your injuries. Don't let this happen to you. Call my law firm first for a free consultation before you sign any important papers, and remember, there's no fee unless we get money for you.
Call attorney Edgar Snyder, 391-2101, 391-2101.
Free Simpson, Marvin the Magnificent!
Hey! Al, listen, there's just too much of these Encore Salisbury steaks for one magician. I can't make these juicy flame-broiled steaks disappear all by myself.
But you're magnificent.
Oh, you can call him Marvin.
Marvin. Of course, a 2-pound family-size entree.
I just can't make a family appear.
I can. Mine'll appear at your place 6 tonight.
Al, I can't tackle all this Encore lasagna.
7 tomorrow. I'll bring my team.
For tasting more, it's Encore.
Look what's poppin' at Shop and Save.
Poppin' with flavor, more flavor than ever, and less fat, too. It's the right thing to do. Bring those right, crisp flavors, they're new. And the taste indulging, right thing to do. Tangy, sour cream and onion, now more flavor on the chips. Less fat and less grease across your lips.
So pop on over to Shop and Save.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
If you're a mom or dad or expect to be one, the Pittsburgh Baby Fair is for you. Enjoy fabulous shopping opportunities, product information, samples, interactive exhibits, and children's entertainment. There's lots to do for the whole family. Admission is only $5 for grown-ups, and all children are admitted free. Discount admission coupons are available at area Giant Eagle supermarkets. The Pittsburgh Baby Fair, October 14th and 15th from 10 till 6 at the Pittsburgh Expo Mart. A portion of all ticket sales will benefit the For Kids' Sake Fund.
You are looking live at pictures outside the Los Angeles County Courthouse. Our coverage continues throughout today here on CBS. Now let's return to our LA Bureau and Paula.
Thanks, Harry. It's just about 18 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Los Angeles. When a trial becomes a national sensation, judges, jurors, and lawyers take the spotlight, often overshadowing the victims. In the O.J. Simpson case, the attorney for Nicole Brown's family has done her best to make sure we never forget that this was a case of murder and that 2 people died. And Gloria Allred is here with me in Los Angeles. Good morning.
Good morning, Paula.
Do you think this has been forgotten by the American public and by jurors, that 2 people were left dead on Bundy Drive?
Yes, I think that there have been many days where it appears that the words Nicole and Ron have hardly been uttered, either by the media or sometimes in the courtroom. They're almost an afterthought.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's part of the nature of the criminal trial that that can happen. But I think it's important that murder victims are always remembered, that they are treated with respect and with dignity and as human beings whose lives were taken, and not just as an afterthought or a footnote.
You spend time with the Brown family. Is this an issue they talk about with you?
I think it has been a concern of theirs that victims be remembered, not only their own loved ones, but also those throughout the country. That's why the Brown family formed the Nicole Brown Simpson Charitable Foundation. They want to prevent more victims, more daughters, more sisters, more young mothers from being battered, from being killed, and perhaps through educational efforts such as they try to conduct, Denise Brown speaking out throughout the country, perhaps through fundraising so that they can help to give grants to organizations that are very important in the area of domestic violence. Perhaps in that way they can begin to make some sort of dent in the area of violence against women.
One thing that's always been very difficult to understand, particularly if you have not been battered, is how difficult it is for a woman to extricate herself from that kind of situation. Denise Brown was well aware of the fact that her sister was being beaten by O.J. Simpson. Has she ever acknowledged to you why she didn't make more of an effort to pull the 2 of them apart?
Well, neither Denise nor the entire Brown family knew the extent and scope of what was happening to Nicole. But I think it's also important for everyone to remember that at the time that Nicole was murdered, she was divorced. She was living separated from Mr. Simpson. But the fact that a woman leaves does not necessarily ensure her safety. In fact, to the contrary, a woman's risk of harm is increased by a batterer after she leaves, which is not to say that women should stay. In fact, they need to know their options. They need to go to shelters. They need to know how they can leave and how they can be safe, if at all possible. But let's remember that she was out of there, and she was trying to get her life together, and I think she had a right to expect that she would be safe and free from violence.
What is the Brown family's expectation of what will happen later today? Are they expecting a guilty verdict?
At this point, I think, frankly, that they don't have expectations except that there will be a verdict. It's really hard to know what will happen. They're very prayerful people, religious people, spiritual people, and they are putting their confidence in the justice system and praying for justice and hoping that that will be the result. They are not praying for any particular result, but just for justice.
Which seems kind of surprising to some people. And I mean, here you see this prosecution build this case against O.J. Simpson, their son-in-law. Why is it so difficult for them to say, we think this man is guilty?
Well, I think that the determination of whether a person is guilty or not is a determination that is properly made by the jury or the court in a criminal justice system. That is, I think, a legal term that is properly applied by the system and not by us as individuals. Some people may say he did it or he didn't do it, but whether he was guilty or not is a determination that will be made by the jury.
What was the reaction yesterday to the swiftness of the deliberations?
I think that there was some surprise, as there has been throughout this country, through families throughout this country. And all of us can guess at what the swiftness of the verdict may mean, but I guess none of us will really know until that jury comes back with the verdict.
Will the Brown family be in the courtroom today when the verdict is rendered?
Yes, the family will be in the courtroom. They are a tightly knit family. They provide a lot of support and strength to each other and courage for each other, and they're going to be there. I think they'll be holding on to each other and giving each other strength, and I'll be there to support them and just hope for justice. Not only for Nicole and not only for Ron, but for many, many other victims throughout this country, too, who every day rely on the criminal justice system to protect them and to provide the kinds of access to their rights that everyone should have a right to expect from our system, and consequences for those who are found guilty of crimes.
If O.J. Simpson is found guilty, have you given Nicole Brown Simpson's advice, any family, or any advice to their family about a guilt verdict or an innocent verdict?
In the event that Mr. Simpson is found to be guilty, then there would be a date set for sentencing. At that time, the victims' families in California do have a right to speak at the sentencing as to what sentence they think the court should impose in the particular case.
Gloria Allred, thank you so much for dropping by this morning.
Thank you.
We appreciate your help. We'll be back.
If you've been in an accident, your life and those of your loved ones have changed, possibly forever. The party responsible may already have a team of lawyers working against you. You need a team of professionals on your side. Goldberg, Persky, Jennings & White, PC is big enough to take on insurance companies and large corporations, but not so big that we can't get to know you personally. Call Goldberg, Persky, Jennings & White, PC at 1-800-LAW-81 for a free consultation. Put our team on your side.
Whoa, at the Giant Eagle Pharmacy, there's a wide selection. Come and see.
I've never seen so many kinds of shampoo. You better choose, hon.
Radical shade.
Groovy price.
Groovy? Mom, you're so retro.
Here's one that won't upset your stomach, Mrs. Wilson.
Giant Eagle, so simple for you.
There are enough choices here to boggle my mind.
These low prices boggle my mind.
Is one phone line really enough?
3 goals in the first period. Johnny's always on the line. When does it do again tomorrow? 2 days.
The kid's computer, tying up the line again.
I'll never get to use this phone.
Bell Atlantic, your local telephone company, understands. Just order an additional telephone line today and you'll get $30 off your next Bell Atlantic phone bill. Call 1-800-811-LINE. One line's not enough.
Bell Atlantic, the heart of communication.
Please pass the all fruit.
Pass the Polaner all fruit.
Pass the Polaner all fruit.
Would you please pass the jelly?
Polaner all fruit is real fruit, sweetened only with fruit juice. You'll call it delicious, you'll call it remarkable, but please, don't dare call it jelly. Polaner all fruit, the spreadable fruit.
want to welcome you back to this CBS News special report. Harry and I will continue our conversation right now with Gloria Allred, who represents various members of the Brown family. Welcome back. Harry will be joining us in a couple of minutes. I wanted to ask you a question about Johnnie Cochran and in his closing statement. In the closing arguments, he talked about O.J. Simpson being a good and decent man. What was your reaction to that, and what was the Browns family reaction to that?
Well, I had a very strong reaction to that because I will never call any convicted wife batterer a good and decent man. And I think that's part of the problem in this country, that people think that they can go around beating women, bruising them, bloodying them, breaking their self-esteem, their spirit, sometimes their bones, and still get away with being called good and decent men. They can go around and have wonderful jobs and have a wonderful reputation in the community, and nobody seems to care that they have beaten a woman to a pulp. Well, I will not call Mr. Simpson a good and decent man, even if he is not convicted of murder, because he is a convicted wife batterer. He's confessed to that. He has been convicted. He has not served one day in jail for that, not 1 minute. He is a convicted wife batterer. He is not a good and decent man. Yes, he's done some good things in his life, but he is not a good and decent man.
What do you think will be the impact of the information that was released about domestic violence in this case on other cases down the road? Is it something the American public will take more seriously?
Yes, and so Nicole did not die in vain because, of course, we would all rather have her than anything else back on this earth, but she has been responsible through her death, through her tragic murder, because it was not just a death, it was a butchered murder, in helping to educate all of us more about domestic violence. And it is violence. It's actually spousal violence. It's violence against women. That's another thing that upset me, hearing Johnnie Cochran and the defense team constantly throughout this year referring to it as domestic discord. It is not discord. Let's call it what it is. It is violence against women. It is women being hurt in their own homes, outside of their own homes, women not being able to be safe because someone whom they have loved, whom they have trusted, has decided that they have the right to control them, to hurt them, to terrorize them, to place them in fear. That is not discord. That is violence.
Harry?
Gloria, how will you feel personally if, when the verdict comes down, the verdict is not guilty?
Well, I'll take a deep breath, whatever it is, and really think about it. I think we are going to have to accept the verdict, whatever it is. We have a system of justice. We must respect it. I hope that everyone will join me in that and respect our system of justice and know that when the jury speaks, we rely on our jury system. We must have confidence in the jury system. We must respect what they finally decide. I'm sure that I will have some personal feelings either way, and hopefully I'll be able to come back to CBS a little later today and share those with you.
Well, we'd love to read some of those tea leaves right now. We know that the jurors asked for champagne to be delivered to their rooms last night. We know the jurors did not look at O.J. Simpson in the eye yesterday as they left the courtroom. And we know their deliberations went a lot more swiftly than people expected. What does that point to?
It's really difficult to say because the jurors also didn't look at Johnnie Cochran. Well, they riveted to him, but it's hard to say what that really means.
Gloria Allred, thanks. Harry, see you in a little bit.
All right.
We'll be right back.
This is CBS.
An injury can cause more than just personal pain. Hospital bills, loss of wages could destroy your life and your family's. Recommended Legal Helpline will find a qualified personal injury attorney in your area who will fight for your rights. Our attorneys are qualified in auto accidents, slip and fall, malpractice, wrongful death, and other accidents. Recommended Legal Helpline can make the difference in your life.
Call 800-80-LAWYER. Get the legal help you need. Call 800-80-LAWYER.
Thinking about your future? Then start cooking with a promising new career in culinary arts. No matter how you slice it, the International Culinary Academy can help you saute your way into an exciting, challenging career. So if a sizzling future is what you're after, don't just settle for any culinary school. Make the right choice. Call the International Culinary Academy today at 1-800-447-8324. Discover the sweet taste of success. Call 1-800-447-8324.
Day and date, Tuesday, October 3. On Wings, he's the horny pilot who can't say no. In the movie Jeffrey, he plays a gay waiter who can't say yes. Find out what Steven Weber's really like and why his next project's a real scream. Join Dana King and Patrick Van Horn live with the latest next Day and Date.
Tuesday at 4.
Lazan reporting live from Los Angeles. Harry?
Morning, Paul. I'm Harry Smith in New York. For more than 8 months, it has felt like the world was contained in one small courtroom. The judge, the jury, the attorneys, the defendant, all crammed together under the never-blinking camera's eyes. But they're not the only ones who have been in court every day. Kitty Feldy is KCRW Radio's legal correspondent. She is in Los Angeles, and we want to talk to her now for a couple of minutes. Good morning, Kitty.
Good morning, Harry.
So, as always, you were ready in the courtroom yesterday. What happened? Walk us through what happened yesterday.
Well, you know, we heard nothing at the beginning. The jury got started late. Then there was a message. The jury had wanted to hear back some of the testimony, specifically that of Alan Park, the limousine driver who came to pick up O.J. Simpson the night of the murders. And the things they were interested in were, what could he see? How dark was it? Did he need to wear his glasses? And could he see that white Ford Bronco parked out in front near the address sign, which is what he was actually looking for? Jury was taking notes. They were listening intently. They were closing their eyes as if to concentrate even harder on whatever it was they needed to hear. That's what they wanted to be sure they wouldn't miss this time around.
What did the judge look like through all of this?
Well, Judge Ito was very relaxed, actually, almost as if he thought the hard part is over, and this is just the perfunctory stuff. When he got that message from the jury that, A, they wanted jury verdicts, and then within the hour, they had reached a verdict, it was sort of a different atmosphere. It was as if, I can't quite believe this is happening either.
It's interesting, when we talked yesterday about this, so much has been made of race in this case, so much has been made about so many different things. But one of the things you said yesterday that stuck with me was that these jurors were interested all through the trial in evidence.
And I think it was true yesterday. You know, what did they want to hear? They wanted to hear something extremely specific. Time, lighting conditions. I used to always say that these were jurors that liked a good mystery plot. They liked to figure it out for themselves. They liked to touch the evidence. They liked to go up and look at it close. They liked to try to, you know, maybe they were Miss Marple or you know, they were someone that really wanted to solve the crime themselves. And I think that this is very much in character with this particular jury.
What do you think it means that they came to a conclusion so quickly?
I don't know. I'm very surprised. I'm stumped on that one, because it seemed to me that there was so much evidence to go through. There must have been things that they didn't agree upon. There must have been things, I used to say this all the time, but there must have been gossip things they had to get past. You know, Judge Ito forbid them from speaking about even what the attorneys were wearing, so I would think there'd be at least a few months worth of that to get through in a few hours. So I am totally baffled. That's all I can say.
So much has been said this morning already and last night about the absence of eye contact between the jurors and O.J. Simpson. You were sitting in the room. Give us your read.
Yeah, you know, when they walked in the room, usually when the jurors come in, you can hear them laughing out in the hallway. Sometimes they'll be finishing off a piece of candy as they walk in the room. Yesterday, they walked into that room as if they were 12 solemn judges. I mean, they were just totally looking straight ahead. They sat down. They kept their eyes lidded halfway, not to look at the defense table, not to look at Mr. Simpson, not to look at the prosecution table either, I might add. It was very, very close-faced, as if, you know, you were sitting down to play poker with people I certainly wouldn't want to have money on the table with.
We have a camera that can give us a picture of the scene outside there, not far from where you are at the L.A. County Court building. Talk to us a little bit about what this is turning into outside.
You know, it's calmer than it was on Friday. On Friday, it seemed like everyone with a costume was down here to strut their stuff. This morning, there was a large number of people who were here to try to get in on the last lottery. You know, if you get here by 7 o'clock, you can get your name in the box, and they'll draw a dozen names of the public who can sit there in the courtroom. So this morning, there was a large number of people here for that. But I have to say, the number of reporters and the number of cameras and the number of producers, I think that outnumbers them by 3 or 4 times. We're a much larger group than they are.
What is your own feeling today as you get ready to go back into that courtroom to sit for maybe the last time?
Yeah, I'm a little sad. You establish a relationship not only among your peers, and the press corps become extremely tight. We lost one of our colleagues to a traffic accident in the middle of the proceedings, but also to the daily banter with attorneys in the elevators, and even that funny little eye contact that you have with certain jurors. They'll sometimes catch your eye, and you try to look away, and then they'll laugh at, they'll sort of laugh that you were caught looking at them. Or yesterday, for example, juror number 12, who Friday gave me a hard time, sort of bugging her eyes at me as if to say, have you had enough of looking at me? Yesterday, she sort of had a different attitude, and I realized that this is it. I'm not going to sit there with these people every day, 5 days a week for the next few months.
Kitty Feldy, eyes inside the courtroom. Thank you very much for sharing your observations with us.
You bet, Harry.
We appreciate it. We're going to talk to the Los Angeles Police Department next about preparations for what if in Los Angeles when we come back on CBS This Morning.
This is like home for us.
The Chris Marnie's Owner's Mario's Cafe.
Every little detail makes this the best. The best coffee beans, the best pastries, even the best way to get out coffee stains. If we do things right the first time, we have more time to do the fun stuff.
Don't just wash, treat, and wash with liquid Tide. Built-in pre-treat ingredients break up stains. The wash does the rest. Pre-treat to help get out most tough stains.
Tide works for us, and if something's working, why change it?
If it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be Tide.
Oh, this is a place, if I didn't own it, I'd definitely come here.
If you've been drinking Ensure, there's a little something you should know. Sustacal has more protein, less fat, and about twice as much calcium. No, Sustacal can't add years to your life, but it might help add life to your years.
Dear Midas, while visiting my family in Gainesville, my brakes made strange noises and stopped working. I went to 2 dealers and got the same answer.
We can't get brake parts for your car. We can't get brake parts for your car.
A 3rd dealer suggested,
call Midas.
Your guys removed my wheels, inspected my brakes, and told me,
we can take care of it.
My hat goes off to your employees for such helpful service. Thank you. Bill Cohn.
Is there a cat food that helps maintain cats' urinary tract health?
Cat Chow Special Care reduces urinary pH and provides low dietary magnesium. Purina Cat Chow Special Care brand cat food. Better care makes better cats.
Morning sinus. It's the worst kind of sinus pain.
How can I face this day?
Introducing Theraflu Sinus. Powerful sinus caplets, no drowsiness. When it's got to work, it's got to be new Theraflu Sinus.
You have reached a verdict in this case.
After 1 day of deliberation, a verdict in the O.J. Simpson murder case. Complete details and analysis tonight on the CBS Evening News.
Tonight on Dave, Bill Hartman, actress Julianne Moore, and music group Candlebox.
I'm going to tell you something, kids. Tonight's show is so funny, you might actually crack a rib. I know I did.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom on The Late Late Show. Reaction to the verdict with your phone calls, plus Jeff Toobin. What does it mean on The Late Late Show coming up?
Live from Nashville, the stars gather for the most performances by the most stars of any award show ever. Superstar Vince Gill hosts the CMA Awards Wednesday.
The Los Angeles Police Department is no stranger to controversial trials and the sometimes extreme reactions to verdicts. This morning, we want to see what kind of preparations the LAPD has made in anticipation of the verdict. Commander Tim McBride is a spokesman for the department. He's here with us live from the Los Angeles County Courthouse. Good morning.
Good morning, Paula.
How are you, Commander? Give us a sense of how many folks are waiting to watch this verdict unfold.
Well, of course, I think eyes all over the nation, which have been riveted to TVs for the last well over a year, are certainly interested in hearing the verdict. And the Los Angeles Police Department, of course, is anxious to hear the verdict, too, and move forward.
We are looking at live pictures of the area in and around the courthouse. What is the closest folks can get to the courthouse if they don't have passes to go inside?
Well, we're letting them get across the street from the courthouse. The last few days, we've closed the street off in front of the courthouse, and there are a few hundred folks that have gathered across the street to see whatever it is that they can see.
What is it these folks are after? Do they just want to spot the major players in the trial?
I think so. I think they want to see, if you will, the rich and famous. They want to see the attorneys that they've been watching on TV. That's about all they're going to see. So I'm not sure what their interest is, but we have had almost a vigil-like group of people that have been there now for day in and day out for the last several days.
Do you expect any trouble from those people?
No, we really don't. Occasionally they get in arguments about who they think is going to, what the verdict is going to be, whether there's going to be a guilty or not guilty, and so one will say one and one will say another, and so occasionally they're scuffling, but otherwise, no.
As you all know, a lot of folks were surprised by how quickly the deliberations came and went. How did that impact upon your ability to get reinforcements in place for today?
Actually, it had very little impact. It was certainly sooner than any of us expected, I think, but we've had a plan in place, a three-phase plan, and so we moved quickly from phase 2 to phase 3. We've had a modified tactical alert since Friday when the jury went out, and the fact that it came a little quicker really had little impact. We're on tactical alert, have some extra bodies available, and really that's about it.
I know you are not allowed to share with our audience exactly what a phase 3 alert means, but what can you tell us about the obvious changes folks will notice in Los Angeles as they drive around the courthouse and perhaps near the crime scene?
Well, we have the street blocked off in front of the courthouse, and of course the two homes in West Los Angeles, the Rockingham home and the Bundy home, we have security there, and we have the streets blocked or partially blocked in those areas. Otherwise, people throughout Los Angeles would continue on without even noticing, going to work, doing what they do on a daily basis, and we expect very little disruption to the average person here.
Commander McBride, I've had the opportunity to talk with a number of LA police officers, and they feel that O.J. Simpson was not on trial during this case, that it was the LAPD that was on trial, and including one of your own, Mark Furman. What is the morale like right now, and how defensive are police officers about the continued scrutiny they've had to endure?
Well, I think morale will improve when the verdict is over and we get over this intense scrutiny and the bashing that's continued on a daily basis by the attorneys in court. This is a murder trial like so many murder trials. It's just that the whole world saw this one. It's very common for defense attorneys to attack the gathering of evidence and attack the credibility of law enforcement. That happens on a daily basis in courts throughout our land, but we don't have so many people watching it, so we'll be happy to see it over.
A number of your colleagues have done the best job they can to distance themselves from Mark Furman. What is the prevailing attitude about Mark Furman, who is no longer a member of your force, which we should make clear?
Well, I think the concepts of racism and hatred that came out, you know, in this trial certainly caused concern to should be every American, because that really isn't what America is founded on. And so I think there has been a certain amount of distancing. We need to pull together as a country, as a society, and go forward in harmony and solve some of the real problems that we have out there. Racism and hatred really don't have any place in a civilized society and in our minds.
Were you personally embarrassed by Mark Furman and the role he played in this case?
I think the verbiage that came out in the tapes certainly embarrassed all of us. Yes, that's true.
Well, Commander McBride, we know you have a very busy day ahead. We wish you the best of luck, and we appreciate your joining us this morning to fill us in on what is happening around the courtroom this morning.
I'm happy to, Paula. Thank you.
I hope the crowds continue to behave. CBS News will continue with more coverage of the O.J. Simpson verdict when we come back.
To create the perfect home office, you need a printer, a scanner, a fax modem, a plain paper fax, a copier, and a telephone. Or the new multi-pass document processing system from Canon. It's the 6 most important pieces of office equipment next to your PC, plus software to run it. With a few clicks of your mouse, you can fax and print and scan and phone. It even makes copies. Multi-pass is everything you need next to your PC. Everything.
Wake up. Remember, we decided to start our morning walk today?
Can't wait.
Wake up to naturally decaffeinated Folgers with the richness of mountain-grown beans and all the aroma and taste of regular Folgers. In fact, if you didn't know Folgers decaffeinated was decaffeinated.
You know, with all these changes, I'm glad we didn't switch to decaffeinated. Nothing wakes me up like this.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Even decaffeinated.
I just needed to wake up.
I know, honey.
It happens in the hospital. It happens at home. It's the onset of heartburn. It's an attack of acid indigestion. For these stomach flare-ups, the #1 choice of hospitals is Maalox. Hospitals know that nothing works faster to rush heartburn relief. Now, you know it too. Fast-acting Maalox. Hospitals can count on it for speed, and that's just what you need. Maalox, the first choice for hospitals, the fast choice for home. In fast-acting Maalox tablets too.
Got something different for your sensitive teeth.
Well, you can take it back. My dentist wants me to use Sensodyne.
This is Sensodyne. Sensodyne with baking soda.
No pain. My mouth feels fresh and clean.
Sensodyne with baking soda. All you feel is fresh and clean.
Any yogurt can help strengthen your bones. Only Yoplait can make you go weak in the knees. So rich, so sensuous, so satiny smooth all the way through. Yoplait really creams yogurt.
13 minutes before the hour. At this point, predicting the verdict in the O.J. Simpson trial is pure speculation, but when it comes to analyzing juries, attorneys turn to Robert Gordon. He is the director of the Wilmington Institute, which studies juries and advises lawyers how best to present their cases. He joins us live this morning from Dallas. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Last time we talked to you, you thought that the jury would return a verdict of not guilty. Are you sticking with that?
I'm sticking with it. It's based on clinical intuition of a psychologist. Of course, psychologists are much better...
That means that's a best guess.
It's the best guess. Psychologists are much better at describing behavior than they are in predicting it. But nevertheless, despite the fact that the jury would not meet O.J. Simpson's glance when they came back into the courtroom yesterday, and nevertheless, because their deliberation was constricted, I believe that they will come back and acquit him.
Why do you think they came to their conclusion so quickly?
I believe that they have been deliberating for a protracted period of time already in a nonverbal manner. I believe that they reached their decision some time ago. You have in the social psychology of group behavior a dynamic where you need a leader, you need your alliances, you need your mechanism by which you can achieve a group decision, and also to bring to bear the social pressure on those who might be recalcitrant and not favor the majority position. All of these dynamics were in place, so it was easy for them to arrive at a conclusion quickly.
But with all of these days of testimony, all of these elements of evidence, all of the contrary opinions, that 12 people could sit down in a room and so quickly agree on something seems unimaginable.
Well, it is unusual for 12 Americans to agree on most things. We say that if you have 12 people at a counter at an airline, you'll have 12 different lines if they're Americans. We all have our perspectives. But what is interesting in terms of the subculture of the jury, you know we have a predominant number of minority group members. Those who are black certainly can identify with appeals of Johnny Cochran, which were so, and also emotionally provocative and sardonic concerning Hitler and the power of the police state.
But a lot of people are suggesting maybe just the opposite, that they got his message immediately and then just decided to reject it.
It is true that some people think redundancy is not useful, but every high school teacher and every grammar school teacher knows that patience and redundancy is very helpful when you're teaching somebody or imparting a message.
We've got about 30 seconds left. What is we've been talking to you on and off now for a while. What's your response to some of the things you heard this morning?
Basically, I thought it was fascinating that we have the American public standing vigil outside of the courthouse. We don't know if it's a wake or if it's the birth of a baby, but you have a national awareness of the jury process, which is really obscures and eclipses Mr. O.J. Simpson, who, after all, is a black icon to many black youngsters, but really no more famous than, let's say, the trial of shoeless Joe Jackson in Cook County, Illinois.
Well, that was in a completely different era, a much more media-less era. I've got time for another question or two. Why do you think we were so captivated by this?
I believe that the broader social policy issues stimulated our interest. First, you have the area of spousal abuse that's of great concern to everybody, and examining it. Are men really violent? Are men really evil? Are men really unwilling to be sensitive to the feelings of a woman? You also have the issue of an interracial marriage. As the time come, as we approach the 21st century, that we will now blend ourselves in this way.
That's about all we have time for right now. Mr. Gordon, we thank you for your help.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for joining us. 9 minutes until the hour. We'll be right back.
As long as there are bedtimes and lullabies, as long as there are old friends and new stories, just as long as there are steady hands and mugs to keep them warm, you'll find Maxwell House decaffeinated coffees. As long as great taste is all you want, Maxwell House decaf will always be good to the last drop.
We're proud to announce that this model not only passed that ball bearing test, it surpassed it.
It's my Dirt Devil MVP with maximum vacuum power. Just think what it can do in your home.
For a touch of arthritis pain, my husband takes Advil. Doctors recommend Advil most for minor arthritis pain, and it's gentler on his stomach than aspirin. He says Advil lets him get back to doing what he loves. Nothing's been proven to last longer than Advil.
Please pass the all-fruit.
Polaner all-fruit is real fruit, sweetened only with fruit juice.
Would you please pass the jelly?
You'll call it delicious, you'll call it remarkable, but please, don't dare call it jelly.
We're talking bras that don't bind. We're talking pantyhose that don't pinch. We're talking just my size. We're talking fit. If you're a full-figured woman looking for a better fit, call Just My Size, the only brand of casual wear, socks, bodywear, bras, panties, and pantyhose designed exclusively for you. Dial 1-800-IT-FITS-ME, and we'll tell you more.
Something sexy.
Just my size. We're talking fit.
Hey, it's me again, the little guy, back with TGI Friday's 3 new Cajun dishes. Just take a look at this. Friday's new Cajun Angels. Juicy shrimp wrapped in bacon, rolled in Cajun spices, and served with a Creole mustard sauce. And called Cajun Angels because the people at Friday's know how much I hate the word shrimp.
Try one of Friday's new Cajun dishes and get a free Oreo Madness for dessert.
Good morning and welcome back to Los Angeles, where the attention of the world is focused on one small envelope. Inside is the verdict in the O.J. Simpson case. It took more than 8 months to get to this point, and if there is one man besides the defendant who found himself in the glare of the world spotlight, it was Judge Lance Ito. This morning, we want to know how well he did his job, as well as the prosecution and the defense. And with me here in Los Angeles, former New York Judge Cy Friedman. You have been working so hard this morning, you've taken your tie and your jacket off.
This is a tough case.
Now that you've had a chance to hear all the varying opinions this morning from your peers, have you adjusted your prediction on whether or not you think O.J. Simpson will be found guilty?
Well, I take pride in my forecasting. I find that I'm right 50% of the time.
We make a great team. I'm right 50% of the time, too.
So together we get 100, maybe.
But what do you think the swift deliberations tell us?
It tells us that they deliberated beforehand.
In advance of the closing argument?
Yes, somehow they've deliberated. You know, it's very hard to say to people, don't think about it. Don't think about it until the case is over and all the evidence is in. But these are intelligent people, and they're thinking about it. And one of two things happen. There are two possibilities. Either they've acquitted or they've convicted. One thing we know, it's not a hung jury.
Well, let me ask you this. If you had been a juror on this jury, at what point would you have been comfortable making up your mind?
Well, I would have waited till the end of the summation, scratched my head a little bit, and probably have said, now that the verdict is in, I can give you my opinion. The DNA evidence was overwhelming, convincing, and definitive.
Although the defense did a pretty good job at creating reasonable doubt when it came to the collection of the DNA evidence and the possible contamination of this DNA evidence.
Well, Barry Scheck did as much of a job as he could do. He really is outstanding because he's in a different position than Johnny Cochran. Johnny Cochran used a flamboyant style of oratory and shifted the case from the defendant to a cause, whatever that cause was, whether it's race or Americanism or anything else. And that's a style which he exemplifies in the most excellent way. He's the paragon of what that style should be. He was excellent at it. But it's going to be determined by the verdict here whether that style works anymore. Because if it comes back a guilty verdict, that's gone. Now,
So what
Barry
does that
Scheck,
mean? That we haven't given the jurors credit enough
Yes,
for being
right.
sophisticated enough to
You
plow
got it.
through all this very
You got
complicated
it.
evidence?
We're not in a generation of my mother or grandmother. These people today, all jurors today, are pretty sophisticated. But it also means that Barry Scheck, who stuck to the evidence, made a pretty good argument, apparently from what you believe, on the evidence. He stuck to the evidence, and he did a great job at it. If they come back with a guilty plea quickly, then they just said DNA evidence, it was all drivel. The rest was all drivel. And even Barry Scheck failed at changing our minds. If it comes back innocent, not guilty, there's no verdict like innocent.
Right.
If it comes back not guilty, then the public, more or less, the jury, accepted the fact that the police just screwed everything up. And we're not going to take that kind of evidence and accept it as determinative.
In the minute we have left, let's talk about the performance of Judge Lance Ito. He has taken a lot of heat for allowing this trial to drag on, for allowing the prosecution and the defense to take over the courtroom. He's been accused of just about everything. What kind of a job do you think he did?
From 1 to 10, a 10.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Very bright, and he called it right down the middle. He bent backwards, to be fair.
In terms of what evidence was allowed
Yes.
and what evidence was thrown
And
out?
in my opinion, he committed very, very few errors, and maybe none of them reversible.
That's from a former judge, folks. Cy Friedman, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thank
Wear a tie
you.
next time, all right? We will have much more ahead in this live special report. We will have the latest from the courthouse itself, where people have been waiting since the wee small hours of the morning for the verdict. We'll be back.
Time's up. Everyone's going to get...
You're on CBS.
Harmerville Rehabilitation Centers have 8 convenient outpatient locations to meet your needs. Even if you just need a few sessions of physical therapy, the centers can treat common strains and sprains. They also offer comprehensive services for treating a chronic condition or for follow-up after a stay in the hospital. For more information, call 1-800-624-HOPE. Harmerville. Daily challenges, lifetime results.
For nearly 50 years, folks have told us how good Bob Evans sausage is. Got some news for you. It not only tastes good, it gives you more for your money, too. Look at this. Take a pound of bacon and a pound of Bob Evans sausage. Now cook them up, and you're in for quite a surprise. Here's the bacon, and here's the Bob Evans sausage. You get more, all right, more than twice as much. Bob Evans sausage, more for your money. That's pretty good news.
Bob Evans, down on the farm.
Join me for the Inside Steer Story, Thursday night at 11, here on KDKA TV2.
Our live CBS News special report continues. The People versus O.J. Simpson. The verdict. I'm Paula Zahn reporting from Los Angeles. Good morning, Harry.
Morning, Paul, and I'm Harry Smith in New York.
We're going to bring you the latest news now from right here in Los Angeles this morning. At this moment, O.J. Simpson's fate lies in a sealed manila envelope. The jury reached a verdict yesterday after less than 4 hours of deliberation. It will be disclosed in just about 2 hours in Judge Lance Ito's courtroom at the L.A. County Courthouse. And that's where Sandra Hughes is standing by. Good morning, Sandra.
Good morning, Paula. Yesterday's announcement stunned every one of us who has been covering this case, and it lured a large crowd of people downtown this morning. In fact, we do have some pictures, and you're looking at them right now. Those are live shots of people lined up outside the criminal courts building. A very long line, as you can see. Many of these people are actually anticipating getting a seat inside the courtroom. Still others are just watching the spectacle, which began yesterday.
While we were taking our brief recess, Mrs. Robertson advised me that you buzzed 3 times and indicated that after receiving the verdict forms that you have reached a verdict in this case. Is that correct, Madam Foreman? All right.
Jurors deliberated less than half a day, but before telling Judge Lance Ito they had a verdict, they asked for a reread of testimony by limousine driver Alan Park, a key prosecution timeline witness. Courtroom observers say jurors took numerous notes during the reading by a court reporter about Park's arrival at Simpson's estate.
Question, was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by at about 10:22? Answer, I didn't see it. Question, and you were looking at that curb, were you not? Answer, yes.
Ann paid close attention to a segment involving testimony about when Cato Kalin was seen walking from behind the house with a flashlight after he heard the thumps from behind his room. Although pundits say a quick verdict is usually considered a sign of an acquittal, what jurors asked to have reread could indicate otherwise.
Alan Park's a key witness for the prosecution because he's the one who can say he didn't see O.J.'s Bronco at his house at this time of the crime. He's also the one who can set the time of the thumps on the wall.
Defense attorney Johnny Cochran had his own interpretation.
I think they read some portion where Mr. Park called his boss, Dale St. John, who told him O.J. always runs late, if you recall. And that could play to the defense, because he always ran late.
When the stunning announcement was made, the courtroom was oddly empty. No one expected the verdict so early. Sitting alone with a clearly shocked and anxious O.J. Simpson was only one defense attorney, Carl Douglas. Douglas told reporters he was surprised, stunned at the speedy verdict, but wouldn't comment on O.J. Simpson's reaction. Other defense lawyers said it's a good sign for Simpson.
No jury has ever convicted an innocent man this quickly.
Ron Goldman's family members were described as anxious.
They've asked me to ask you, the press, if you could leave and let them be alone with their thoughts.
Now, I just talked to O.J. Simpson friend and lawyer Robert Kardashian, who tells me there is a plan in the works right now for O.J. Simpson's release if he is acquitted. Here is the plan. Robert Kardashian will accompany O.J. Simpson back to the men's central jail. From there, he will be whisked away to an unknown location. Kardashian said he didn't know right now if that would be another country or out of town. Kardashian tells me Simpson has no plans to make any formal statement to the media now or in the near future. Paula?
Well, he sounds a lot more optimistic than another member of his team, Alan Dershowitz, who describes himself as cautiously pessimistic, already talking about planning an appeal. What is going on here with the defense?
Well, Paula, I would say that Robert Kardashian is cautiously optimistic, but I think the fact that they are throwing together this plan in such a speedy manner could be an indication that they may expect an acquittal.
Sandra Hughes reporting from the L.A. County Courthouse. We'll check in with you a little bit later on this morning. Thanks so much. In other news, Ron Goldman's birth mother arrived last night in Los Angeles to be in court when the verdict is read. Sharon Rufo thinks the quick verdict may point to a conviction.
I believed in Simpson's guilt from day one, and I still do, and I hope that by the questions that they came and asked to go back into the room and discuss were for the prosecution, and that would be the positive side.
The people of Los Angeles are especially anxious as they await the Simpson verdict. Police are hoping for the best and getting ready for the worst. James Hattori, that is. Sorry, James. It's been a long morning here.
It has
more
Paula.
on that. Good morning, James.
Good morning. Los Angeles police are out in force this morning on alert, but they're not being very specific about their plans for handling what happens after the verdict is announced. They do stress that they don't really expect any problems, but mostly they want to reassure the public once this controversial trial reaches an end.
Both at the crime scene, Nicole Simpson's apartment, and O.J. Simpson's Brentwood home,
police have put up roadblocks in an attempt to keep away the curious.
There's your story. Life goes on even in front of O.J.'s house, right?
Officers probably wouldn't mind if tourists were their biggest problem. Uppermost on city officials' minds, the rioting that broke out following the Rodney King verdicts in 1992.
I feel very confident that our city is totally prepared for any occasion. And we also feel very confident that the people of Los Angeles are going to act calmly and reasonably.
Authorities concede the racially charged comments by Detective Mark Furman may have exacerbated tensions in Los Angeles. Yet even African-American community leaders say there's no comparison between the King and Simpson cases.
In terms of the emotional kind of hot buttons that some people were concerned about, I don't think that they've been here.
Still, there is an air of anxiousness here and no shortage of predictions about the Simpson verdict.
They didn't prove to me or to Los Angeles that this guy did these acts.
There was too many smoke holes in the defense. They were changing stories. So I think he's guilty.
As the speculation and anticipation continues to mount this morning, so far, it seems the biggest problem is crowd control outside the downtown LA courthouse. Still, city officials say they are going to make an effort to be out in the community and talking with people to see how this verdict plays across Los Angeles. Paula?
James Attore, thanks so much. CBS News will have live continuing coverage of the O.J. Simpson verdict. It is expected to be unsealed at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That is, of course, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Harry and I will be with you here until noon Eastern Time. Then Dan Rather will take over for the remainder of the day. Then tonight, Dan will return with a special live edition of 48 Hours on the Simpson verdict, beginning at 8 p.m. We will not learn the verdict in the O.J. Simpson trial, as we said, for another couple of hours. But ever since the very early hours of this morning, people have been getting as close as they can, as James Attore just showed you, to the Los Angeles County Courthouse. And our Sandra Hughes is there right now, along with Alan Starkey, who is a visitor from Britain, who has watched this trial unfold on CNN and Sky TV, and Carla Wright, another woman who has avidly followed this trial. Good morning to everybody. Sandra, before we get to our guests, I wanted to ask you who we expect to have observing the proceedings in the courtroom today.
Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure if they're going to go ahead with the public lottery, but I would assume that they are, and that's probably why we're seeing so many people lined up outside. But, you know, the courtroom's very small, Paula, so there are only a few seats for hundreds of people, literally, that are outside the courtroom right now. Other than that, we'll see the cavalcade of lawyers, and I would imagine that we will see the entire Goldman family and the entire Brown family, as well as all of the media crushed inside that small courtroom.
If they honor the public lottery today, how many of those folks standing in line will actually get to go inside?
Well, Paula, I'm not sure of the exact count, but each time that I've been inside the courtroom, it's been the back row of the courtroom, the fourth row in the back, and I would say probably at the most a dozen seats.
Once the verdict comes down, what can we expect to happen in the courtroom?
Well, that's anyone's guess. Who knows how long it's going to take for this verdict to be read, but I would imagine the first order of business is going to get the jurors out of the courtroom. Now, interestingly enough, when this all got started, the jurors were all brought to a central location. It was Dodger Stadium, and that's where their families brought them. And then they were taken in the bus and began the sequestration. One might speculate that something like that could happen again. They would whisk them away from the courthouse to a secret location where their families are waiting. But of course, that's all speculation.
All right, I want to check in now with your guest, Alan Starkey of Great Britain. Mr. Starkey, why were you so interested in coming to the courthouse today?
Well, I've watched the trial since the outset on television back home in London, and I just wanted to taste the atmosphere.
I have seen some of the newspaper accounts of the trial in Great Britain, and some of your reporters over there have written it off as a freak show. How have you perceived this trial?
Yes, we think it's very much a circus compared to the way trials are run back home.
What has been the biggest surprise to you as you've watched this trial go on and on and on?
I think as the trial lasted a year, and the jury only took 4 hours to make up its mind, it makes it a bit of a farce.
If you had been a member of a jury, what would be your decision? Is O.J. Simpson guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty. And I happen to think that perhaps O.J. knows a little bit more about it than he's letting on, but I believe we've seen corruption in the police, and I'm not at all happy about it, and I think he would have to be found not guilty.
Carla Wright, if you had been given the opportunity to be a member of the jury, which way would you have decided?
I would have said not guilty also.
Tell me why.
Just for the fact that there was reasonable doubt.
And
just
what
as simple as that.
What created reasonable doubt for you?
Really, Johnny Cochran's closing statements, without a doubt. I mean, the whole, and being born and raised here in Los Angeles and tasting a little bit of police corruption myself and harassment, that's without a doubt. I don't think he's guilty.
If a guilty verdict comes down, what kind of message does that send to everybody in this country who's watching this trial, Carla?
I think it says that, you know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that's going to do. This is just, I was telling other people down there while I was waiting that this is a really up-in-arms type of situation. A lot of people feel that he's guilty. I think that women's abuse centers and stuff will find that, you know, they'll find that encouraging, but for us who have been harassed by police, who are subjected to police harassment every day, who knows the corruption throughout the police department, that's just going to be another slap in the face for us.
And that clearly is what the prosecution is worried about, Sandra. What is the likelihood of jury nullification being reflected through this verdict? And by that I mean the jury being asked to pay attention to the moral issue of racism and Americanism and not to the simple law of the land.
Well, I'm not sure that we would know that right off the bat, Paula. I know there has been some discussion of the possibility of jury nullification, and you know, Carla brings up a really good point, and she was obviously very swayed by what Johnny Cochran had to say in his closing arguments. He asked those jurors to ignore basically the so-called mountain of DNA evidence, the trail of blood, and vote to try to erase racism, putting a very heavy burden on the shoulders of these jurors.
Well, we appreciate you, all of us, joining us this morning. We have to leave it there. Sandra Hughes, thanks for your strong reporting all morning long. Carla Wright, thank you for your time. And Mr. Starkey, have a safe trip home. It is just about 14 minutes past the hour. Coming up next, how well did the prosecutors do their job? We're going to ask a woman who knows just what that job is all about.
Look, I just invented something amazing. New 2000 flushes, blue plus bleach. Powerful blue detergent plus stain-fighting chlorine bleach. 2 cleans in 1 for up to 4 months. New 2000 flushes, blue plus bleach. 2 cleans in 1.
I can't fall asleep.
I can't stay asleep. Try Nitol Quick Caps to fall asleep fast and get a good night's sleep. Get Nitol Quick Caps.
Nitol will help you get your Z's.
Maybe once in my life.
Ah, come on.
All right, twice. Never.
How often do you change long-distance companies?
What's the point?
They're all the same.
Now there actually is something worth changing for.
How's that?
Sprint Cents. On top of 10 cents a minute, you'll get cash back every year you're with Sprint.
This is called money.
10 cents a minute and some cash back?
Great. Thank you.
Good idea.
Yeah, I would like cash back.
Who wouldn't?
It pays to save.
Sure beats making money the old-fashioned way, doesn't it?
Call for 10 cents a minute evenings and weekends. Now with cash back.
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R.
We use only select cuts of 100% quality beef in our bologna, and never any fillers. 'Cause we wouldn't put anything in our bologna you wouldn't put in your kids.
'Cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-A.
It happens in the hospital. It happens at home. It's the onset of heartburn. It's an attack of acid indigestion. For deep stomach flare-ups, the #1 choice of hospitals is Maalox. Hospitals know that nothing works faster to rush heartburn relief. Now, you know it too. Fast-acting Maalox. Hospitals can count on it for speed, and that's just what you need. Maalox, the first choice for hospitals, the fast choice for home. In fast-acting Maalox tablets too.
17 minutes after the hour, Marcia Clark called it a mountain of evidence. The DNA, the blood, the hair, the unaccounted for time, all pointing to O.J. Simpson as the killer of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. But was it enough to convince the jury? Joining us is Ruth Jones, a law professor at Fordham University here in New York and a former prosecutor herself. You found out yesterday afternoon, just like the rest of us did, that the verdict was in. What did you think when you first heard it?
Well, I was very surprised, as everyone else was, because everyone wanted to talk about this case, and the fact that those most intimately involved didn't feel the need to talk about the case for hours was tremendously surprising. I have no idea what the verdict is, but generally, it's very hard to imagine a jury convicting someone of a homicide in this short time.
I want to dwell on this point for a second, that 12 different people sat in this room absorbing all of this information, and clearly from the get-go, we're not talking about a couple of passes here, from the get-go, they all agreed on it would take them that long just to go through the charges,
Right.
would it not?
Well, the charges are pretty straightforward. You either believe that he did it or not. I don't really think there's a huge debate as to first-degree or second-degree murder. But I think what is unusual, because if you gather 12 people off the streets, they're going to have a very different perspective on the evidence, as with most of life. So that's what's surprising, that they could sit there and listen to the evidence and pretty much everyone hear and believe the same thing.
Do we all argue about it and discuss it so much because we have so much more information, and it might have been easier for them because they sat in the jury room and were sequestered for so long?
I think that's certainly a possibility. Not only did we hear a lot more other testimony, Rosa Lopez, we heard about Marian Gertjes, so there were many other things that we heard about that the jury didn't. But I think the other part of this is they didn't get a chance to hear the spin on the evidence that we did. Watching on television, it was almost impossible to form a completely independent judgment of what you saw because you had commentators and anchors and reporters telling you more about what you saw. They didn't have that burden. They only had their own perceptions as to what occurred in the courtroom.
Your instincts, it sounds like your instincts are telling you it's a not guilty verdict. A lot of other people have been guessing it's a guilty verdict, and if that in fact is true, race as an issue becomes not an issue at all, and gender becomes the main issue, do you think?
Well, I think...
Or determining factor, anyway?
Well, I think the evidence was the determining factor, no matter which way they go. And I think the mistake that we have all made about the race and gender analysis is to presume that people are black or they're women. In fact, we have a combination of people with a variety of life experiences. There are black women on this jury who know about racism, in particular in the Los Angeles community. But these are also individuals who I believe took their service very seriously, who tried to look at the evidence and make a determination on the evidence. Race was important because I certainly think the defense raised the idea that if someone is racist, they were perhaps not telling you the truth. But I also think that the jury could consider the evidence, and I've always believed that.
And disregard Johnny Cochran's admonitions in the end because you're not telling me anything I don't know anyway.
Well, but certainly, let's disregard what Johnny Cochran had to say, but look to what Chris Darden had to say. That, in fact, this is not a vote or a straw vote on your personal acknowledgement of being a member of the African-American community. What your verdict in this case is not about that. It is not about racism. It is about how race may have factored into the actions of the police officers. But in addition to looking at that, you have to look at the evidence. What evidence is there that is available that says to you that he is either guilty or not guilty? So race was always a factor. I just don't believe it's the determining factor.
You are a former prosecutor. You teach law in one of our great universities. What are the lessons to be learned from this, or are we ready to even understand that yet?
Well, I think we're very eager to rush to some lessons for this case. This case stands for very little. It stands for a verdict on the evidence that was presented to these 12 jurors. I think it would be very easy to try to draw from it some lessons about the criminal justice system, some lessons about racism or sexism, but those answers are more difficult, and they don't come by looking at how one case is created in the criminal justice system. To know whether the criminal justice system treats people fairly, you have to ask how it works for O.J. Simpson and how it works for Joe Smith. And it's only from really taking a long view of the criminal justice system that you find the answers to the more difficult questions.
And I think the most important thing that we have talked about this morning is conventional wisdom in this case has proved wrong every time.
Well, this case is unlike any other case. Most of the basic issues presented are presented in criminal cases. There's the issue of police conspiracy, how evidence was gathered, but there has never been someone this famous accused of this serious a crime.
Ruth Jones, we thank you, as always. Thank you very, very much for your help this morning.
My pleasure.
Do appreciate it. 23 minutes after the hour, we want you to stay tuned for more of this live CBS News special report, The People versus O.J. Simpson. Paula's live in Los Angeles will continue with coverage all day, including more special reports with Dan Rather starting in about 35 minutes. Stay with us.
Oh, great. Your mother-in-law is coming, and she'll want to see that dress she gave Ellen. Yeah, that one. She's always on time, and you've got just one shot at getting that stain out. Don't risk it, whisk it with new Whisk. A Whisk with even better stain fighters. In just one wash, Whisk gets out tough stains, even juice stains. She's coming! Don't risk it, whisk it with new improved stain-fighting Whisk.
Traces of crimson on your toothbrush. Bleeding gums. It's caused by germs. Listerine kills them. It helps prevent the gum disease, gingivitis. Kill the germs. Spare your gums. Listerine, the power of prevention.
Ma, if you can't sleep, take a Unison. It helped last time. It's not habit forming. Ma, it's okay to help yourself get a good night's sleep. All right? I love you too.
If you've been drinking Ensure, there's a little something you should know. Sustacal has more protein, less fat, and about twice as much calcium. No, Sustacal can't add years to your life, but it might help add life to your years.
The emotions are high.
You're hot. It's pressure. It's like a war without bullets.
We asked some of the hottest coaches in the game to switch antiperspirants and try Degree.
Body heat activated. Let's try it and see.
As your body heat rises, Degree releases extra protection when you need it most.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to switch.
Just keeps you dropped.
Certainly worked for me.
Switch to the antiperspirant that's body heat activated.
In the heat of the moment.
That self-confidence has got to be there.
Degree antiperspirant for an extra degree of protection.
Welcome back to our live CBS News special report. Johnny Cochran was caught up with as he was heading into the L.A. Criminal Courts building here this morning, in Los Angeles, that is, and we want to run that piece of tape right now to see what he had to say as we get ready to find out the verdict.
Cautiously optimistic. We'll wait to see what happens. What do you think about this this quick decision by the jury? Do you think that means anything, and if so, who do you think it favors? It would just be speculation at this point, so it's hard to say who it favors, so we just have to wait until 10 o'clock. Have you spoken to O.J. Simpson? Can you tell us how he's feeling? Well, he's also optimistic, cautiously optimistic. I spoke to him last night about 10 o'clock, so we're going down and we'll be ready. We'll be there. Can you tell us anything that O.J. said in terms of... Nothing, just that he was, he's looking forward to it. Just put this behind him. What about the family? Have you spoken with them and their... Yeah, they're all here. The family's all here. We'll all be in court today. All right, we'll be
There you have it. That's Johnny Cochran on his way into the court building this morning out in Los Angeles. Paula joins us from there. Before we talk to Paula, there's the Simpson family as they are getting ready to leave this morning and on their way to court. Paula's in L.A. In our bureau, and Kristen Jeanette Myers and Greg Garrison, who have been talking with us in the morning about this case for so many months now, are at the court building. Good morning, all.
Good morning
again, Harry.
Kristen, I have a question for you, and I'm not sure we've had a chance to talk about it yet this morning. Let us assume for a second that O.J. Simpson is found guilty. How does the appeal process work?
Well, in California, there's an immediate appeal for all defendants. And so O.J. Simpson is one of those defendants who probably doesn't need that safeguard because he's had an appellate lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, on the case since this case started. And in talking about what issues might be brought out by the defense in the event of a conviction, Dershowitz has cited, of course, the Furman tapes and the fact that a lot of them didn't make it in, and also the fact that the jurors were not told about why Mark Furman just dropped out of this case mysteriously. We know he took the fifth. Also, they have some complaints about the search that was done of O.J. Simpson's home, whether after what we've learned about Detectives Furman and Van Adder, that is still a valid search. I think Professor Dershowitz has a laundry list that he'd be quite happy to bring to an appellate court, but again, that's in the event of conviction.
Paula.
Harry, I'd like to have Greg try to glean some meaning out of what we've heard from the defense over the last 12 hours or so. You heard what Johnny Cochran just had to say. He is cautiously optimistic. Robert Kardashian is optimistic enough to be making arrangements to get O.J. Simpson escorted from the county courthouse and to another location. And Mr. Dershowitz says he is cautiously pessimistic. How do you read that?
Well, I think Professor Dershowitz probably comes closer to the truth of where everybody's stomachs and hearts are right now than anybody else. Johnny Cochran is a guy that's the master of the stiff upper lip, and he's not going to come in and show a bad face or be dour at this moment. He's going to keep his client's feelings up and his emotions buoyed up. But let me tell you, Johnny Cochran's a committed guy, and for all the criticisms we throw in his direction when we disagree with what he does, he left it all on the floor in that courtroom that day, and his heart is right up here, and it isn't going to move until this thing's over with. They're all pessimistic on both sides of the aisle, holding their breath until the last of these words comes out. And I can tell you, after all these years of doing this, this is my most unfavorite, the worst place to sit ever.
Greg Garrison, Kristen Jeanette Myers, Harry, thank you all. 29 minutes past the hour. We'll be back.
You're on CBS.
Seriously hurt? When Berger and Green take your case, we see if you're entitled to cash, lost wages, future medical care, lump sums, or lifetime payments, a new vehicle, money for pain and suffering, special damages, more than one cash award, a total payment package. We'll talk to you free about any money we can get for you. 1-800-999-2626. Berger and Green, the injury lawyers. 1-800-999-2626. Talk to us.
If you depend on home oxygen, your choice of a provider is critical. I'm Jim Lycan of Lycan Home Medical. Home oxygen isn't just a product. It's the people and service behind it that really count. If you're unhappy with your current service or need more information, give us a call. Our respiratory specialists will come to your home to evaluate your needs with no cost or obligation. Call 1-800-441-3602. At Lycan, our success is measured by customer satisfaction.
Yes, sir! Why in blazes is there so much food in these Encore entrees, Private? Even a hungry soldier like me can't finish all this rich, meaty lasagna. Encore's a 2-pound family-size entree, sir. Son, the core is the only family I got. Then here's the drill. My family will report for duty at 1800 hours, sir.
Al, about these Encore Salisbury steaks.
We'll skid over here and play 7 tomorrow.
For tasting more, it's Encore.
So you choose your multivitamin for what's in it.
Sure.
Maybe you should pick one for what's not.
What?
Geritol completes a multivitamin that's sodium-free with no added sugar or lactose.
You're kidding. Geritol? Okay. Does it have as many vitamins and minerals as the others?
More than 1 a day in Theragran. And Geritol has the most beta-carotene.
All the antioxidants, folic acid, calcium? I'm taking it.
Geritol Complete. Complete for what's in it. Special for what's not.
trial watchers guessing the verdict and even second-guessing themselves. Sonia Hamlin is a jury communications expert, the person lawyers turn to for help in selecting and convincing the jury, and she joins us here in New York this morning. Good morning.
Obviously, they're convinced. Whatever they've done.
And it didn't take them very long to do. What do you read into that as a jury expert?
It is a great surprise to all of us. Sometimes verdicts come in very quickly like that. And there's kind of a rule of thumb about that. If there's been a confession and there's obviously nothing to discuss, they will do it very quickly. And therefore, we assume that quick verdicts are sometimes guilty, but very often they're for acquittal. In this instance, you know, we're all just sticking our necks out and saying what it could possibly be.
What's your instinct tell you?
The instinct is probably guilty from several different issues. First off, the fact that they didn't look at him. And secondly...
You're talking about, for people who are just tuning in or whatever,
yes,
the idea that
when the jury came in, they did not look at O.J. at all. They looked away, they avoided him, and we know that people avoid conflict, and they're embarrassed, you know, you sort of turn your eyes away. And if you feel guilty about something, that is, you know, I did something that's really going to hurt you, I would hardly look at you and do that. The other piece is that we have assumed all this time that there was at least one very powerful juror who was very pro-prosecution. That's a woman who admitted that she'd been on 5 juries and turned people around on one jury where they were all against her. She would not just quickly roll over and play dead. So if that verdict was to her liking, then it would come through quickly. Otherwise, there would be some argument about it. It's just a surprise that they, I mean, for them to even have had time to talk to each other. 2 hours and 50 minutes is not it.
It's not very long. Some people have suggested that through all of this, despite the fact that they were sequestered and everything else, that just in table talk, talking about your children or the vacation or whatever, that somehow people exchange information that way, and there's an intuition that builds up.
You know, you can talk about ancillary issues around the case. Things like, well, my sister, you know, always had a lot of trouble with her husband, and they really didn't get along. He was really pretty mean to her, even violent. Now we're talking about something that has to do with the case, but we're not talking about the case. So that we could share opinions about key issues of how you feel about people who become addicted to a relationship and can't get out of it and seem to be obsessed and so forth.
Sure.
And we may therefore have been not noticing that they were getting some sense of each other. The interesting thing is that when the jurors who were first dismissed talked about the great strife in the jury and that there was racial division in the jury, later witnesses, jurors who left, said that wasn't true at all, that things had seemed to have calmed down and they'd all sort of made friends. It's like being away in camp with your bunkmates. And you do have favorites, and there are folks you don't talk to and people whose, you know, tables you're not going to sit at.
Let me ask you this question. Assuming for a second, this is all guesstimation, and we're what? We'll know for sure in about an hour and 25 minutes, I guess. Assume for a minute that this jury has found O.J. Simpson guilty. So much has been made of the racial makeup of this jury. Remember during jury selection and what it would predispose, and if it was a defense's jury or a prosecution's jury, and if they find him guilty, and if they do so in 2 hours and some minutes, does that not break many stereotypes?
Well, what a good thing. If it does, what a good thing. I think, first of all, it shows a kind of applause for the human spirit and the fact that these jurors transcended what everybody would expect and listened hard and made a decision using intellectual skills and setting aside the usual emotional prejudice. And I think beyond that also is the fact that we ought to take a hard look at all our stereotypes. Why would we automatically assume, you know, that all African Americans would simply vote directly for O.J.? There were people on the jury who had never even seen him play and to whom he didn't have that kind of heroic stature. And we really have to take a hard look at the fact that Jews don't vote as a bloc. You know, people don't vote as a bloc. And we have to let go of that and see what else influences us, what else was persuasive.
The other part of the stereotype argument was made so well by Ruth Jones earlier on this broadcast, who said as a former prosecutor, African Americans convict African Americans every day in this country, and to assume otherwise is pretty much folly.
You know, when Johnny Cochran said send a message, he really opened an interesting door, because there's a lot of messages that could be sent. One of the messages that could be sent is the independence of jurors, the fact that although they'll have to go back to their community, and although this may not be popular with everybody, I stand my ground. which is a very powerful American kind of message. I think the fact that the jury could hunker down and listen for 8 months, live through it, and then still come up with a verdict is another message. I think the jury system works is another message.
Because in the midst of all of this, about midway through the trial, everybody was saying, well, doesn't this show how it doesn't work? And because we're losing so many jurors, we might not make it to the end of the trial with the jurors that were there, and everybody was ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, see, one of the things we ought to find out is a lot more about how those jurors got lost, because that really was unprecedented. You don't come into a trial 3 months after the trial and say, I found out something about you. You know, how did that happen? I think that we'll take a hard look at the jury system again. I think we'll take a hard look at sequestration, at the tight rein that a judge has to have on the courtroom to make sure that things work. But in general, I think we're coming out okay.
We'll find out the verdict here in just a little while. Sonia Hamlin, as always, thank you very much for joining us today.
Nice to see you, Harry.
Do appreciate it. 23 minutes till the hour. Next, breaking the O.J. habit. We're going to see what some trial addicts plan to do with the rest of their lives.
Minor arthritis pain. Ever wish you could go back in time to before you had arthritis? Try Capsaicin P with a topical analgesic ingredient doctors recommend most for arthritis pain, and feel almost like you've gone back in time. Capsaicin P.
It happens in the hospital. It happens at home. When heartburn flares up, the #1 choice of hospitals is fast-acting Maalox. Hospitals can count on it for speed, and that's just what you need. Maalox, the first choice for hospitals, the fast choice for home.
Discover the finishing touch for today's natural hairstyles. VO5 hairdressing. In seconds, VO5 adds shine and gives spot control for flyaways and split ends like no regular conditioner can. Because VO5's formula is more like your hair's own natural conditioning and shine agents. Apply a touch of concentrated VO5 to your ends and work upward for added shine. Or apply VO5 just where you need it to tame flyaways. For that finishing touch, Alberto VO5 hairdressing.
Ma, if you have trouble sleeping, take a Unisom. It helped last time, didn't it? Didn't you feel better after a good night's sleep? It's okay. The doctor said it's not habit forming. That's right. Unisom. Ma, there's nothing wrong with helping yourself get a good night's sleep. All right? I love you too.
Waiting for the ultimate chicken finger food? Try new Colonel's Crispy Strips from KFC. Juicy, all-white meat chicken, freshly prepared with our special extra tasty crispy recipe. New Colonel's Crispy Strips are good enough to be a meal, so eat them with a knife and fork, if you can wait that long.
Everybody needs a little KFC.
And for a mealtime treat, bring home 3 Colonel's Crispy Strips, mashed potatoes and gravy, coleslaw and a biscuit, all for just $2.99.
Good morning and welcome back to Los Angeles and our live special report by CBS News. If you were with us about 10 minutes ago, you got to hear Johnny Cochran talk about the impending verdict. He described his team as being cautiously optimistic, and reporters caught up with Los Angeles District Attorney Gil Garcetti this morning to get his view of what might transpire later on.
That's why I emphasize, that if the jury bases its decision strictly on the evidence, strictly on the law, there is only one conclusion that they can reach.
All right, but are you very optimistic this morning, Mr. Garcetti?
I'm human. Maybe even a little butterfly here and there. I mean, this is going to be quite a day for all of us.
Were you surprised?
I think those butterflies are shared by every member of both teams, the defense and the prosecution. For most of us, the O.J. Simpson trial has been pretty fascinating and at times horrifying, but for some, it's become one of life's necessities. They are the O.J. addicts. So with the trial all but over, what will they do now? Let's ask 2 of them. Sheila Scott-Scotty and Tina Barry are with me here in Los Angeles. Good morning. Thank you very much for being with us.
Good morning.
What is going to replace the O.J. Simpson trial in your life?
Probably doing the errands I've put off for a year, and maybe visiting friends I haven't seen too much over the past year.
This trial has had that dramatic of an effect on your life?
Yes, it has.
I know you do some part-time teaching.
Yes.
As a school teacher. How many hours a day would you say you average watching this trial? when you weren't working?
No. Oh, probably maybe 3 or 4 hours watching and the rest of the time listening.
Had you ever watched any trial before? And had you ever been interested in legal proceedings before?
I have. I watched the Menendez trial quite a bit. Yes, legal proceedings. Yes, I have been interested. My husband, my sister are attorneys. And so I would say the whole subject of laws I find very interesting.
Now, Scotty, you watch a lot more television than 3 or 4 hours a day.
Yes, I do.
On a heavy viewing day, how many hours a day were you watching of the trial?
I would say all day, and if I couldn't watch it, I'd have a tape.
Why did you keep on coming back for more?
Because I'm an advocate for truth and justice. I'm obsessed with knowing that truth and justice will prevail in any case that I become interested in. And this particular one, I certainly have an obsessive interest.
Do you think in this case justice will prevail?
I don't know. Juries are too unpredictable. I have, through my experience in the courts, juries are very erratic, and most of them come in biased because of their own life experiences. And hence, unless they're very objective and very honest and courageous, especially with this jury, because when I watched Johnny Cochran intimidate them and practically threaten them and say, hopefully you will come in with a decision that you can go back into your neighborhood with, and when you go home, I want you to make the right decision and know that you made the right decision. I really considered that, plus a lot of other things that he said, a threat.
In your judgment, is the only just verdict a guilty verdict?
Yes. Absolutely.
How about you?
Yes.
Tell me why.
Because I think the evidence is absolutely crushing. There's no way around it, in my opinion.
At any point of this trial where you had any doubts about the credibility of the DNA evidence? The defense spent a great deal of time talking about contamination and cross-contamination and missing samples and planted socks. Did you buy into any of that along the way?
Not at all. Not at all. I thought the defense's argument for the most part was ludicrous.
How about you?
Well, I have files and files on the DNA, so that is a state-of-the-art test that I have a lot of confidence in, and I know that the upper courts have approved the validity of it, and in law it's been accepted. And so as far as the DNA is concerned, I'm convinced that that evidence definitely established his guilt.
Sheila Scott-Scotty and Tina Barra, thank you for joining us this morning. You could be down at the courthouse if you weren't talking to me. You better get going now.
Shana Tova.
It's 16 minutes before the hour. More coverage of the O.J. Simpson verdict straight ahead. We'll be back.
Introducing the only denture cleanser with Listerine ingredients, New Epident Plus to fight denture odor. It kills 99.9% of the germs that cause denture odor, so you can get this close. New Epident Plus. Kill the germs, kill the odor.
Of the many products that claim to clean glass, Windex with Ammonia D is the best. It leaves a beautiful streak-free shine just about anyone can appreciate. Windex from S.E. Johnson Wax.
Both these men have colds, but Jack's cold pill quit working hours ago. Dave's didn't quit because he took Effidac 24. It relieves congestion, stuffy nose, sinus pressure for 24 hours. While most tablets dissolve immediately, one Effidac Steady Tab keeps releasing just the right amount of medicine at the right time for 24-hour relief. It keeps on working so you can too. Effidac 24, the cold pill that just won't quit.
Stylists already know how great Tresemme is, but do you?
These are professional products. They give you salon beautiful hair, but without the salon price.
You are going to love Tresemme's one-of-a-kind remoisturizing conditioner with a special blend of almond oil, silk protein, and rich emollients.
Conditions your hair beautifully.
Gives it softness and shine.
You get salon in the bottle, but not in the price.
Professional, affordable, Tresemme.
Do it better with Mrs. Dash. Do it better with Dash, Mrs. Dash. Do it hot, do it cold, do it spicy, do it bold. Do it better with Dash.
It's
the sassy Mrs. Dash blend of 14 herbs and spices that makes flavor bigger, bolder, better. Mrs. Dash, good for food, good for you.
Do it healthy, do it light, do it smart, do it tonight. Do it better with Dash. Yeah, Mrs. Dash.
Our coverage of the Simpson case continues. We expect to have a verdict here, or at least we'll see court open up its doors in another hour and 12 minutes or so, and our continuing coverage will resume in another 12 minutes or so when Dan Rather takes over here. In the meantime, Paula joins us in Los Angeles. She's at our bureau.
Good
Greg
morning.
Garrison is at the court building along with Sandra Hughes. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning once again.
Sandra, fill us in a little bit for some folks who may just be joining us. Who did you see this morning, and what kind of a conversation did you have?
I assume that you're possibly talking about Robert Kardashian.
That's a good guess.
He is the lawyer and also a very good friend of O.J. Simpson. I talked with Bob Kardashian this morning. He tells me there is a plan in the works right now that if O.J. Simpson is acquitted, Kardashian is going to go with him from the courthouse back to the men's central jail. From there, they are going to whisk him away to an unknown location. Kardashian wouldn't tell me if this is another country or another city. Kardashian also said there is no chance O.J. Simpson is going to be talking to the media now or in the immediate future. But it sounds like he's cautiously optimistic of an acquittal.
So, Greg, do you think he's being overconfident?
Well, Mr. Kardashian is 2 or 3 steps away from this case, and he can say what he wants to say from his position. He didn't litigate the thing, and he didn't go to trial. So it's a little bit easier for him to act blasé about it and have all these plans. I suppose it's a good idea to have that, but there's an awful lot of evidence in support of convicting this guy. A short jury deliberation like this with that mountain of evidence, I'd be pretty cautious if I were him. And you notice you're not hearing quite that much braggadocio out of the lawyers that actually tried the case.
Were you surprised to hear Alan Dershowitz say last night that not only was he cautiously pessimistic, but that he was already sort of thinking about critical points of an appeal?
Well, that's been his position. He's been the guy that's been waiting in the wings in the event the man was convicted, and he's been working all the way along, and he's got a lot of things to talk about. Now, whether they work or not, it's anybody's guess, but certainly there are a lot of interesting issues that would come up. Is he honest in saying he's cautiously pessimistic? Everybody in this case ought to say that they're terrified, because that's exactly what everybody is. And when they get into this we'll be fine business, that's for the outside, that's a stiff upper lip, and inside their hearts are turning to jello, and they can't wait for about 10:20 to be over with.
Sandra Hughes, I have a question for you. You have reported from that court building for these many, many months now. What is it like there this morning? And do I hear helicopters overhead? And just paint a picture for us, if you will.
You certainly do. First of all, I have to say that, as Greg just said, my stomach or my heart is turned to jelly as well. I think everyone who is covering this case is excited, is anticipating what is going to happen at 10 o'clock Pacific time this morning. So very, very unexpected. The scene here, as you ask, Harry, is very, very busy. We had a line of people going from the front door of the courthouse all the way across the street. These are people trying to get in for those 6 public places in the courtroom. We have helicopters hovering overhead, taking pictures of the folks who are on the ground, taking pictures of the other folks who are on the ground, taking pictures of the attorneys who will hopefully arrive soon and go into the courthouse.
It's an amazing, amazing sight. Paula, I was stunned when we all heard the news yesterday afternoon, and I'm just not sure if we're all ready to understand whether or not this is going to be over or not.
Oh, I know. I, among others, was shocked. I was in the kitchen last night when I was watching the tube and realized what was going on. It's been interesting to me to see how off guard all of our experts were. I mean, obviously, this jury has completely defied conventional wisdom throughout this trial, but even F. Lee Bailey told us as recently as several days ago he expected the deliberations to go 3 or 4 days. So we all will wait for the verdict to be announced, which will happen just about in an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you all for joining us. See you, Sandra. See you, Greg. See you in a little bit, Harry.
Be right back.
I've got kids, so I've got stains. That's why I only use Clorox 2.
Clorox 2 has special stain-fighting enzymes that lift stains, plus more brighteners than other color-safe bleaches.
Clorox 2. It's tough on stains, easy on colors.
I love eggs from my head down to my legs.
Heard the latest news about eggs and cholesterol? Right for our booklet, Eggs in Good Health.
Ooh, you gotta love it, the incredible edible egg.
Mentadent users, ask your dentist about Arm & Hammer Peroxycare.
Our dentist gave us a reason to try a different baking soda and peroxide toothpaste.
Arm & Hammer Peroxycare.
The reason?
More baking soda.
2 out of 3 dentists recommend baking soda for healthy teeth and gums. And only Peroxycare's patented formula gives you 10 times more baking soda than Mentadent.
No other baking soda and peroxide toothpaste gives us as much.
Arm & Hammer Peroxycare, serious care for healthy teeth and gums.
And now try new Arm & Hammer Peroxycare Tartar Control.
Reveal the natural beauty of your wood with Pledge. Pledge has cleansing conditioners to gently lift dirt and fingerprints, so you see that beautiful shine every time you dust. Pledge. Let the natural beauty of your wood shine through. S.C. Johnson Wax.
I was tired of portrait studios telling me what portraits to buy, so I chose Sears. I pick my favorite portraits in my custom session, and I can get a color proof instantly with their new portrait preview system. Plus, at Sears, I only buy the portraits I want. I decide how many I want and what sizes, so there's no sales pressure. You can choose any portrait studio, but who'll give you choices like that?
Get the portraits you want from the people you trust at the new Sears Portrait Studio.
Some days I get these really pounding headaches. I used to take Tylenol, but it didn't always get rid of all the pain. So I've been using Advil for a while now. I found that on my tough headaches, 2 Advil work better than 2 extra-strength Tylenol tablets, better than Tylenol gel caps. And you know, nothing's been proven to last longer than Advil. For my tough headaches, Advil just works better. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
And for the sinus congestion that can come during allergy season, try Advil Cold and Sinus.
And I am in Los Angeles, where we're just about an hour away from the verdict being revealed to the rest of the world in the O.J. Simpson case. There's been a lot of speculation about what the quick deliberations meant. The jury only deliberated for just about a half day, and the key players in the case were asked this morning about what that meant and how they were looking ahead to the verdict. Let's listen in on what Johnny Cochran had to say on his way to the county courthouse this morning.
Why don't you just tell us how you're feeling this morning, Johnny?
Cautiously optimistic. We're waiting to see what happens.
What do you think about this this quick decision by the jury? Do you think that means anything, and if so, who do you think it favors?
It would just be speculation at this point, so it's hard to say who it favors, so we just have to wait until 10 o'clock.
Have you spoken to O.J. Simpson? Can you tell us how he's feeling?
Well, he's also optimistic, cautiously optimistic. I spoke to him last night about 10 o'clock, so we're going down and we'll be ready. We'll be there.
Can you tell us anything that O.J. said in terms of...
Nothing, just that he was, he's looking forward to it. Just put this behind him.
What about the family? Have you spoken with them and their feelings?
They're all here. The family's all here. We'll all be in court today.
Reporters also caught up with Los Angeles District Attorney Gil Garcetti this morning. This is what he had to say about what is going to happen.
That is why I emphasize that if the jury bases its decision strictly on the evidence, strictly on the law, there is only one conclusion that they can reach.
All right, but
Are you very optimistic this morning, Mr. Garcetti?
I'm human, maybe even a little butterfly here and there. I mean, this is going to be quite a day for all of us.
And Police Chief Willie Williams has had a lot to say about the O.J. Simpson trial. He has cautioned everyone not to judge the actions of the LAPD, the police department, by the actions of Mark Furman. He has also maintained all along that it should be O.J. Simpson who's on trial, not the Los Angeles Police Department. Let's listen what he had to say about the verdict.
Well, the Los Angeles Police Department over the last 3.5 years has totally revamped its tactical training. We have an integrated system with city, county, national, state people, whoever is necessary. While today we have absolutely no indication that anything is going to go awry, whether it's an innocent verdict or a guilty verdict, the message that we're sending is that this department, under this leadership, is prepared to do whatever is necessary. We will allow no one to go out there and in any way break the law. If you do, you're going to be locked up and sent to jail, period.
And police officials tell us they are prepared for any verdict that might be reached later today. As you've seen, Harry, all morning long, they have reinforcements in place around the county courthouse. Here's a shot from above. You've got, I'm told, a half dozen or so helicopters hovering over the county courthouse right now. You've got thousands of spectators, some of whom have been camped outside for the last 7 hours, trying to get a spot in line so they can just catch a glimpse of members of the defense team and prosecution team walking into the courtroom if they choose to walk in that way. So it is quite a day down at the courthouse. The police department does not expect any major problems regardless of the verdict, but they have these reinforcements in place just in case.
All of this incredible time that has passed since the murders were first uncovered to O.J. Simpson's arrest, the many months in court. The game is over. We just don't know what the last play of the game is yet, I guess.
And I don't think anybody was expecting this last play, which was this quick deliberation. I think you probably were just as shocked, Harry, as the rest of us, how quickly this verdict came down. Even lead defense officials were saying the deliberations would last 3 to 4 days, and they ended up lasting less than a half a day.
And the more people we talk to throughout this morning and through last night's, the more different opinions we'll get. We'll know the answer in an hour or so. Dan Rather takes over now as CBS News Live coverage continues. We'll see you in the morning.
CBS News. Have you seen your country today?
Warning.
Don't panic.
Warning.
And don't go crazy.
The verdict is in, so be prepared because CBS Daytime will not be seen today due to CBS News coverage. But your favorite daytime soaps will return to their regularly scheduled times. Check your local station to be sure. And don't worry, this is only temporary. It won't be for long.
I promise, okay?
It was a quiet town until she came. Now we got ourselves a regular crime wave.
I'm sure I saw a bullet mark.
And that Fletcher lady, she's in deep trouble. Murder, she wrote.
Then, how can a reporter save the world?
You work here?
One child at a time.
I won't leave him hung out to dry like this.
New York News, after Murder, She Wrote, Thursday.
This is CBS. When I started to drive a car like this back in the 50s, I had confidence that if I was hurt in an accident, an insurance company would take care of everything. I'm attorney Edgar Snyder. Today, many insurance companies have lost that personal touch. They're just big business. If you're hurt in an accident, you need a law firm on your side. That's why you should call my law firm first for a free evaluation of your injury claim. And remember, there's no fee unless we get money for you.
Call attorney Edgar Snyder, 391-2101, 391-2101.
What do you do when your boss hands you a ticket and says, be in Bermuda tomorrow? Pack. I love adventure, and I don't like the same routine every day. So I chose a career with travel written all over it. And I started at the school that has placed travel professionals all across the country, Sawyer.
Ask yourself, should you choose a career like mine?
Yes, if you like earning benefits along with your paycheck.
Call Sawyer today.
Have any questions about your prescriptions or over-the-counter medications?
Giant Eagle Pharmacist will be on call with the answers to all your medical questions.
Phone the Giant Eagle Pharmacist Day, Wednesday from 1 to 7, here on KDKA TV2.
Real stories of the Highway Patrol, tonight at 7:30.
Correct, Madam Foreman.
This is a CBS News special report. The O.J. Simpson case. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good day. In one short, agonizing hour, O.J. Simpson will learn his fate. At 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time, the jury will render its verdict, guilty or not guilty, in the murders of Nicole Brown, Simpson, and Ronald Goldman. If O.J. Simpson is found guilty of first-degree murder, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars with no hope of parole. If he is acquitted, he'll walk out of court a free man after spending more than a year in jail. The verdict comes after the jury stunned the nation by reaching a decision following only 3.5 hours of deliberation. This after 133 days of testimony in a trial that lasted over a year. Until the verdict is read, we'll do our best to set the stage, to sharpen the focus, to help you understand what is about to happen, to give it some context and perspective and background. Right now, let's check in with CBS News correspondent Bill Whitaker outside the courthouse. Bill?
Dan, this is the day that everyone has been waiting for. All of the principals, all of the press, and members of the public are now converging on this criminal courts building. Now, we understand that O.J. Simpson has been inside the courts building since about 6 or 6:30 this morning. Now, we do have some videotape that shows his family preparing to head here to the courthouse. His mother, his sister, and his daughter all leaving the Rockingham residence, O.J. Simpson's Rockingham residence, and getting into cars headed here to the criminal courts building where they, with the rest of us, will wait to hear what the verdict is. Now, we have heard from both sides in this case this morning. Earlier, lead defense attorney Johnny Cochran said that he was full of hope and that so was O.J. Simpson.
Why don't you just tell us how you're feeling this morning, Johnny?
Cautiously optimistic. We're waiting to see what happens.
What do you think about this this quick decision by the jury? Do you think that means anything, and if so, who do you think it favors?
It would just be speculation at this point, so it's hard to say who it favors, so we just have to wait until 10 o'clock.
Have you spoken to O.J. Simpson? Can you tell us how he's feeling?
Well, he's also optimistic, cautiously optimistic. I spoke to him last night about 10 o'clock, so we're going down and we'll be ready. We'll be there.
Can you tell us anything that O.J. said in terms of...
Nothing, just that he was, he's looking forward to it. Let's put this behind him.
What about the family? Have you spoken with them and their
they're all here. The family's all here. We'll all be in court today.
Now, on the other side, District Attorney Gil Garcetti said that he was cautiously optimistic.
That's why I emphasize that if the jury bases its decision strictly on the evidence, strictly on the law, there is only one conclusion that they can reach.
All right, but
Are you very optimistic this morning, Mr. Garcetti?
I'm human, maybe even a little butterfly here and there. I mean, this is going to be quite a day for all of us.
Now, the defense team says that they are planning for an acquittal. O.J. Simpson's good friend and attorney, Robert Kardashian, said that the defense team put together a plan late last night that following an acquittal, they will go to the jail and help O.J. Simpson put his belongings together and whisk him away, where they won't say. Now, what we can expect today is that when the court begins at 10 o'clock, that Judge Ito will ask the jury foreman to hand over the verdict. At that time, he will ask O.J. Simpson and his attorneys to rise, and he will ask the clerk of court to read the verdict. At that point, the judge will turn to each one of the jurors and ask them whether they all agree with the verdict that they hand down today. Dan?
Bill Whitaker at the courthouse in Los Angeles. A number of people have called in to ask, well, when they poll the jury, if one juror says, well, I've had second thoughts about it, what happens? What generally happens in that situation, and that has occurred from time to time in jury trials, then the judge can send the jury back in the room to resume deliberations. That's for those of you who've been wondering or asking. Now, whatever the jury's verdict, it's clear Americans are sharply divided by race about the likely outcome of this case. Our latest CBS News poll, taken only this past weekend, indicates that 74% of whites who were asked believe Simpson is, quote, probably guilty. On the other hand, the poll indicates that among African Americans, the same proportion, 74%, think Simpson is probably not guilty. Let's go down to correspondent Bill Legatuda standing by outside the courthouse. What's the scene there now, Bill?
Well, Dan, whatever happens an hour from now, one thing is certain. The city of Los Angeles will come to a complete standstill waiting for this much-awaited verdict to be read. At the moment, the circus-like atmosphere that has been around during much of this trial continues. And take a look at what it looks like now out in front of the courthouse. This is the street in front of the courthouse where the verdict will be read shortly. It is a crowd of about 3,000 people who have been here for hours. Who are these people? Many of them have come very early in the morning just to be a part of the scene. This is Los Angeles, which loves a spectacle, and they've got one today. The police have cordoned off both sides of the street. They have people behind partitions, along with the cameras, the souvenir hawkers, and people who had come here early in the morning hoping to get a seat in the courtroom. They draw lots very early in the morning, and only a few are chosen. It's kind of a ghoulish version of the Oscars here in Los Angeles this morning, with people shouting at the celebrities and the lawyers and the well-known faces as they arrive for the courthouse today. Now, the police department has been placed on full tactical alert as of about an hour ago because, quite honestly, no one knows what the reaction will be.
Full tactical alert means that all watches have been canceled. In essence, the police have a greater presence on the street. Detectives are in uniform today. And the police chief was asked just a short while ago what this means for the city and what he expects.
Excuse me. The Los Angeles Police Department over the last 3.5 years has totally revamped its tactical training. We have an integrated system with city, county, national, state people, whoever is necessary. While today we have absolutely no indication that anything is going to go awry, whether it's an innocent verdict or a guilty verdict, the message that we're sending is that this department, under this leadership, is prepared to do whatever is necessary. We will allow no one to go out there and in any way break the law. If you do, you're going to be locked up, sent to jail, period.
Los Angeles, Dan, as you know, is an unpredictable city, so who knows what is about to happen. Many people expect spontaneous outbursts of emotion, but beyond that, who knows? Perhaps, and hopefully, the biggest reaction to come this morning will be a gigantic sigh of relief from this weary city of Los Angeles that you may hear all the way back on your coast today, Dan.
Bill Lagatudo, thanks. Bill mentioned that some people had certain expectations. One of the things we've learned through this long trial is what we expect frequently does not occur. What we least expect often does happen. This verdict is being announced on O.J. Simpson's 473rd day behind bars. For jury members, they'll be allowed to go home right after the verdict is read. They've been sequestered for 266 days. It took them only 3.5 hours of actual deliberation to reach a verdict, about the time it takes to play a football game. Joining us again, as they have throughout this complicated trial, are law professor and former prosecutor Laurie Levinson in Los Angeles, well-known defense attorneys Ted Wells and Gerald Lefcourt here in New York. Laurie, what's the traditional wisdom about what such a quick verdict in such a complex case could mean for O.J. Simpson, and also touch on the possibility that the quick verdict lays out should O.J. Simpson be convicted for possible appeal?
Well, the traditional wisdom is on a quick verdict, O.J. Simpson would go free, that it would be an acquittal because the jurors basically didn't want to look at the evidence. They just went on their emotional pitch as made by Johnny Cochran. We don't know whether that'll come true today, and a lot of people doubt it. In terms of O.J., I'm sure that's what he wants. He wants the quick verdict that has traditionally been an acquittal.
Ted Wells, what significance do you see in the jury asking yesterday for a readback of some small portion of the testimony?
Well, again, the traditional wisdom would be that the readback was good for the prosecution because Alan Park really was one of the prosecution's strongest witnesses, and that would suggest that there would be a conviction. At the same time, in my experience, I have experienced very bad readbacks, bad notes from jurors, and then received an acquittal for my client only hours later.
Jerry Lefcourt, what about laying the groundwork for appeal with the jury coming back so quickly? Surely, if O.J. Simpson should be convicted, someone's going to say, listen, the jury didn't pay attention to the judge's instructions. They already had their minds made up.
Yeah, well, it looks that way, but, you know, we don't have any experience with a jury that's been sequestered this long. I'm sure the defense lawyers will be all over the jurors after the case if they do convict, trying to find out, maybe certainly taping all of their interviews and trying to find out whether they were deliberating before they should have been, violating the judge's instructions. But the thing that concerns me most from the defense is that the body language of the jurors, not looking at O.J. Simpson, sort of suggests that they don't want to face him. And I've never been in a situation where jurors were coming in to acquit my client where they just didn't give me some eye contact, something to indicate that it's going to be all right.
Chair Lefcourt, Ted Wells, Laurie Levinson, we'll be back with you again, of course, as we go along with this continuing CBS News live coverage of the hour preceding the Simpson verdict. The verdict is to be opened, the envelope is to be opened in about 50 minutes from now. So we'll have much more in the way of context and perspective as we go along to set the scene in this hour leading up to the verdict. We'll be sampling reaction to the verdict with Americans around the country. Once the verdict is in, we'll be going to correspondent Art Rascone in Miami, who's with a group of law students from the University of Miami Law School, a group that has been watching the trial from the start. Art, give us a quick indication. Have the students there indicated to you how they think it's going to go? Well, unfortunately, we don't have any audio from him at the moment. We will have later on when we're actually sampling reaction. And let's face it, when we ask people what do they think, in 50 minutes now, a little less than 50 minutes, we're going to know. So in the great scheme of things, it doesn't really matter much what anybody thinks at this hour, including the alleged experts, including especially this one who've been so wrong so much in the past. In Washington, D.C., correspondent Bob Orr He'll take the pulse of people watching the verdict in our nation's capital. And in Los Angeles, CBS News has assembled a panel of residents to talk about the verdict and give us their views on what it could mean for their city. That, of course, will be coming once the verdict is in. But before we do that, let's talk about this jury. Everyone, and I mean everyone, was stunned with how fast the jury agreed on a verdict. Joining us now is Ann Cole, jury consultant and expert on what makes juries tick. And what do you make of this quick decision, Ann, now that you've had overnight to think about it?
I think that this is a jury that has become cohesive after the last people were dismissed in June. I think all of the mercurial personalities, the hotheads, have left the jury. I think this is a jury that knows each other. They've lived together. It does not surprise me that they were able to elect a four-person so quickly. It also doesn't surprise me who that four-person was. This is someone the dismissed juror said everyone got along with and everyone liked. I do think that until the jury verdict comes back and we get to talk to the jurors about how they decided, that it's really doing them a great disservice to say that the verdict is meaningless or that the jury system should be dismantled. And I'm very distressed that people have been saying that kind of thing last evening and this morning.
Ann Cole, thanks. Let's go to Ruth Jones, a former prosecutor here in the city of New York and now at Fordham Law School. Ruth, you've been thinking in the past 24 hours about that sudden comeback by the jury. Share with us what some of your thoughts are leading up to this actually opening the envelope and getting the verdict.
Well, the only thought that keeps going through my mind is that at some point, the evidence in this case spoke to the members of the jury. And that's surprising because there are 12 distinct individuals, and the idea that they all came up with the same conclusion after hearing all of the evidence is very surprising. I think if you had gathered 12 people off the streets, they would have had very different opinions.
Ruth Jones, we've talked a lot. Some would say, in fact, I would agree with the criticism, perhaps too much, about the racial makeup of the jury at the expense of discussing the gender makeup of the jury. Can you address yourself to that for just a moment and whether you think that it may or may not play as heavily as race in the jury?
Well, I think gender is a very important factor, and I think race is an important factor. I think the disservice that we have done this jury is to try to separate out those factors and say, this is a black juror, or this is a white juror, and in a sense saying, well, that will tell us what their verdict is. Their verdict will be based on their life experiences, and that will be viewed from their race, their gender, their jobs. And so I think gender may be important, and we really haven't analyzed it sufficiently, but ultimately, it's going to be the evidence. And I think what happened is, at some point, they came to a conclusion they believed one side or the other. And we'll have to wait to hear what point that was for them.
Ted Wells, this jury picked a jury foreman very, very quickly. Now, the law varies from state to state as to how jury foremen are selected. In California, it's elected by the jurors. Were you surprised at that? Do you attach any special significance to that? And what, if anything, do we know about the woman who was chosen foreman?
Well, it's really hard to read that much into it because the woman who was chosen is actually the #1 juror. And in some states, whoever is the #1 juror automatically becomes a four-person. So it's very possible they went back and they said, look, you're in the #1 seat, you go ahead and be the four-person. At the same time, some of the dismissed jurors had indicated that, in their opinion, that #1 juror was going to be the person who would ultimately be selected. But if you look at her background, you would think she would be a pro-defense juror. She is a person who apparently at one point in time received some laboratory tests that had been mixed up and were not accurate. She herself apparently is not a football fan, but she indicated that she was friends with a number of people who were football fans. She even made the statement during voir dire to the effect that but for the tapes in the Rodney King case, no one would have believed Rodney King. So her background might suggest a pro-defense attitude, but ultimately it is the facts that apparently will drive this verdict. Not race, not gender, the facts.
Ted Wells, thanks. Let's go now to Art Rascone again in Miami. We couldn't get him up with audio a few moments ago. Art, if you're hearing me loud and clear now, let's try once again. You've been sort of sampling opinion among the law students. Let me turn the question in a different direction. In what, about what, do they appear most interested besides the verdict itself?
I think they appear most interested in, as you said, the verdict itself, of course, but they are most interested that it took such a brief amount of time to deliberate. And a quick sampling here of those students, a couple of law students here. What do you believe the verdict will be and why?
I believe it to be guilty. The evidence is just too overwhelming at this point.
Personally, I think he's guilty, but I think the jury's going to come back not guilty. They deliberated for too short of a time.
This is the sampling in a rather informal and unscientific poll that we've taken, and just talking with several of the students here, that 50% of them believe that he is not guilty, and another 50% believe he is guilty. Interestingly enough, those black law students that I spoke with, these are those who will be entering the courtrooms as prosecutors and defense attorneys very soon. They felt, although personally believing that O.J. Simpson was not guilty, they believe that he will be convicted. Dan?
Art Rascone in Miami, of course, the reaction we're most interested in, and the reason Art is with those law students, is after the verdict comes in, roughly 43, 44 minutes from now, we'll be going to him to get the students' reaction. Right now, let's go to Bob Orr in Washington on the street there. Bob, what are you picking up on the street?
Well, Dan, you know, Washington is a town always, every day, consumed by politics. But today, all of that is on pause. And people here are talking about the O.J. Simpson verdict, which is coming up in less than an hour. Now, this is Tracy McDonald, and she has some strong opinions. Tracy, what do you think the jury is going to say?
I think they're going to find him guilty.
Do you think he is guilty, or do you think that's just what they're going to find?
I personally don't think he's guilty, but I think they came back with a verdict very quick. I think he will be found guilty.
All right, thank you very much, Tracy. This is Patrick Fitzgerald, who deals with ethics and philosophy. You've had time to analyze this. Patrick, what is your sense of what's going on there?
Well, Bob, I think they're also gonna find him guilty, mostly because they I hear that the jury didn't look at his eyes when they came back with the verdict. And so I think that if they thought he was innocent, they would have been able to look him straight in the eye.
Usually quick verdicts are acquittals, they tell us, but in this case you don't buy that.
No, I think he's guilty.
All right, very good, Patrick. And this is Mike, a courier in town. Mike, the street buzz is all about O.J. today. Finally, this is over. What's going to happen?
Well, I think he's innocent, but it was set up from the beginning. The glove didn't fit. Who would leave a glove on a murder scene? He did have a white carpet, no blood on it. He was set up from the beginning because he was a black role model.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. The high-powered people in this town have certainly taken note, Dan. Among the things that have happened today, former Secretary of State James Baker canceled a speech at the press club, and Senator Sam Nunn was supposed to make an announcement about his political future, and that now is on hold. Everything in Washington is taking a pause as they wait for the verdict in Los Angeles. Dan?
Bob Orr, thank you very much. Joining us here in our New York studio, another of the country's more distinguished criminal defense attorneys. We've had Jerry Lefcourt, Ted Wells, many others. Stephen Jones from Texas and Oklahoma, who's seen so many criminal trials, currently representing Timothy McVeigh, who is charged in the Oklahoma City bombing, along with a long list of other clients. You've watched this O.J. Simpson trial from the beginning. You told me that you were surprised as the next fellow the jury came in so quickly yesterday. Tell me give us some context for this based on your experience.
I think that the decision yesterday on the verdict, which will be announced today, tells us three things that no practicing lawyer is surprised at. First, this has been a sequestered jury. We know that when a jury is sequestered, that it develops groupthink. So the fact that they came back so quickly is not a surprise, but is in fact the norm. Now, maybe it's a little surprise they came back that early, but groupthink, where the jury loses its individuality and begins to operate and think as one group, is clearly reflected here. The second thing is that it will be a meaningful verdict. Whichever way the verdict goes, Dan, there is evidence under the law to support either decision. And so it simply boils down to who did the best job of advocacy, in my opinion.
Ted Wells, what about this? That it's not all that unusual when the jury has engaged early in groupthink to find them coming back so quickly. That runs counter to what most of the comments were last night when it first happened.
Well, I think what was just said is correct. At the same time, there was evidence in this case really to support either side, and how you view that evidence depends to a great deal on your life experiences. And what we really thought is, among 12 people, given that everybody in the public seems so divided, that probably there would be both camps on that jury, but apparently that's not the case.
We need to get to a break, but I can't resist asking you this question. Based on your experience, is it true, as many people tend to believe, and particularly in the wake of this trial tend to believe, that you only get justice, you only get a really fair hearing in American courts if you have money? Mr. Jones?
I think, unfortunately, that's basically true.
Ted Wells?
I actually disagree. I think the people that usually get hurt are the middle-class people. I think if you're poor enough to get a public defender, most public defenders are very good trial lawyers, and rich people can afford good lawyers. It's the people in the middle class, who don't qualify for a public defender, who usually have trouble.
Well, let me say I agree with that. When you said people with money, the poor, of course, do have the public defenders, and the very wealthy have private retained lawyers. But I completely agree with Ted that it's the middle class who don't have enough to hire outstanding lawyers so often, but who don't qualify for public assistance that really are caught in the squeeze.
Well, would you agree or disagree that if you have the money and the willingness to spend the money, you do get a better break in court?
I think that's true, but 30 years teaches me that jurors almost inevitably make the right decision. It's just one of those chemistries of human nature and conduct that we can't explain, but it so happens that so often it is, in fact, the right decision.
When we come back, a closer look at the testimony of limousine driver Alan Park and how what he said might have swayed the jury one way or another. And we'll examine the Simpson defense strategy and its emphasis on race and police conspiracy. Could it possibly have backfired?
If Mother Nature could make a bread, it would be Roman meal. Nutty sweet goodness, a low-fat way to help give your body nutrition. Roman meal, that's eating smart.
From Eureka Technology, the Victory Clean Air System for powerful cleaning on and above the floor. The Boss, sleek, trim, powerful. Mega Boss 14-inch wide path cleans faster. Boss and Mega Boss, both mega values, only from Eureka.
Introducing an Alka-Seltzer that goes where no Alka-Seltzer has gone before. New Alka-Seltzer caplets. Now you can get the fast, effective relief you need in an easy-to-swallow caplet. So the next time you get acid indigestion or heartburn with headache, Alka-Seltzer caplets provide a very convenient solution. Anytime, anywhere. New Alka-Seltzer caplets, a great new way to feel better fast.
This, we want to take you to Los Angeles via satellite and a live picture of the crowds that have gathered outside the courthouse. They started gathering before dawn this morning. And don't be too quick to say, well, it's Los Angeles, what do you expect? A strong argument can be made that with a trial that has received this much notoriety in virtually any city in America, you might very well have had something akin to this, of people wanting to gawk a bit. Let's return to our experts. Laurie Levinson, review for us what happens to O.J. Simpson if the verdict is guilty. Obviously, if it's not guilty, he walks out a free man. But
well,
if he's guilty, what happens to him?
If O.J.'s found guilty, then what will happen is the judge will set a sentencing hearing, probably about 30 days down the road, and the victims' families will have a chance to talk to the judge, and O.J. will have a chance to talk to the judge, and the judge will pronounce sentence. After that, you would expect O.J. to appeal, and he has an automatic right to do so.
Ted Wells, I want to ask you, do juries generally follow the judge's instructions about such things as don't talk about this case with one another?
As a rule, they do. I mean, experience shows that the jury system works, and actually works very well, and that over time and over a number of cases, it tends to do rough justice. You talk to most prosecutors or defense lawyers, they will tell you that they believe very strongly in the jury system, and most jurors tend to take the instructions from the court very seriously. At the same time, there are a legion of cases where there have been breakdowns, where jurors have not only disregarded the court's instructions, where they have fallen in love with marshals and court officers, and there have been romances on the side. Even there are a couple of cases where jurors started to have romances with prosecutors during the case. I mean, it's, you know, there are wacky situations out there, no doubt. But as a rule, the system does tend to work.
Let's go to Los Angeles, where Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law School professor, a member of the O.J. Simpson defense team, and the man who would likely handle any appeal of a guilty verdict. Alan Dershowitz, thank you for joining us. Your thoughts at this moment?
Well, first of all, I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts in my office, where we're busily working, as we have been for the last year and several months, on potential issues for appeal. This is probably the best prepared appellate case that has ever been prepared before a verdict has come down. When you're an appellate specialist, you're paid to be a pessimist. We're programmed to be pessimists. We always think worst case scenario. We're always preparing for the eventuality of a possible conviction. I have no idea whether there'll be a conviction or an acquittal in this case, but we're ready to go if there is a conviction and if O.J. Simpson asks us to handle the appeal for him.
First of all, my apologies about the location, but give me a quick preview. If this verdict is guilty, you're going to mount a quick appeal. Give me two foundations of a possible appeal.
Well, one, of course, would be the search and seizure in this case, the pretext that the police used to climb over the wall when they knew for sure that he was a suspect. They had already learned about the alleged spousal abuse, and it was clearly a pretext. That's an important constitutional issue. We're going to, of course, focus very heavily on the judge's decision relating to the Furman tapes, both excluding most of the tapes and also failing to give an appropriate instruction when he pleaded his Fifth Amendment, and also the nurse, the cop nurse, who testified under oath that he had taken 8 cc's of blood from O.J. Simpson, very important to the defense case, and then was allowed to have a videotape in which he was essentially schmoozing with the prosecutor, not under oath, not subject to cross-examination, without notice to the defense, and completely retracted his story and gave a story favorable to the prosecution. Those are all very important appellate issues raising constitutional questions.
Keeping in mind the verdict is not in, and it may very well be not guilty for O.J. Simpson, but if it is a guilty verdict, very quickly, do you have any grounds to pursue whether the jury talked about this case among themselves despite the judge's instructions? And if so, would that be grounds for appeal?
Very, very hard to get into a jury deliberations. There was a case in Florida a few years ago where a jury verdict was reversed because of this kind of misconduct. We would, first of all, try to find out what went on. When did the jury deliberations begin? We're hearing all kinds of reports that some jurors had made up their mind even before the deliberations began. We're hearing reports about bailiffs' accounts of jurors having made up their minds. We want to find out, and when the verdict comes down, whoever loses this case will be trying to get from the jurors information about the processes in which they deliberated or didn't deliberate, and we'll make a decision, obviously, after we find out the facts about whether this is a possible basis for appeal. But there are, I think, stronger issues on appeal, more traditional issues for appeal in this case that we've already prepared for.
Thank you very much, Alan Dershowitz in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The announcement of the Simpson verdict is coming up soon, less than a half hour away now, just about a half hour, so stay here with us. We'll be back in a moment with our CBS News coverage.
You're on CBS. That's a pit bull.
Michael, it's a toy poodle.
It's a pit bull!
Fine. Joseph?
Don't be cruel, man. The name is Elvis.
Okay. Janine, how's the issue at home?
Well, I've not tested, but I know there's no radon in my home.
Phenol can be harmful, especially when it comes to radon, the second leading cause of lung cancer. So call 1-800-23-RADON for free information on testing your home.
Where's that peanut butter and bacon sandwich that you promised me, man?
If you've been injured on the job and are now collecting workers' comp, you may get a letter from the insurance company ordering you to return to work. But what can you do if you feel you're not able to return to your present job? I'm attorney Edgar Snyder. Remember, injured workers have rights too. The insurance company can't force you to return to work if you can't perform your job. For a free evaluation of your rights under the workers' comp law, call us first.
Call attorney Edgar Snyder, 391-2101, 391-2101.
Which leading multivitamin is sodium-free with no added sugar or lactose and has the most beta-carotene? It's Geritol Complete.
You're kidding. Geritol?
And it has more vitamins and minerals than these.
I'm taking it.
Geritol Complete. Complete for what's in it, special for what's not.
Wing star Steven Weber takes off. Next day and date.
Coverage of the...
Good day. For those of you just joining us, good day again. To those of you who have already been involved in our CBS News live coverage leading up to the Simpson verdict, we're standing by for a verdict in the double murder trial of Orenthal James Simpson. The verdict is less than a half hour away now. While we wait, let's check back in again with CBS News correspondent Bill Lagatuda, who is outside the courthouse in Los Angeles. Bill, what's happening at the moment?
Well, Dan, Los Angeles loves a spectacle, and they've got one this morning. Behind me in the street in front of the courthouse where the verdict will be read shortly, a crowd of 3,000 people has gathered, and the police are there to make sure no one gets out of line. They've separated the street. They've got people behind ropes. The cameras are there, the souvenir hawkers are there, the people who've come just to be part of this historic event are here, and it has kind of a ghoulish Oscar night quality to it. People are shouting to the participants as they walk into the courthouse, the lawyers, the well-known faces. A lot of people have come down here just to be a part of this event. As for what is going to happen, one thing's for certain. When the verdict is read, life in Los Angeles will come to a bit of a standstill. Many companies plan to take their coffee breaks. Certainly people will be gathered around their radios and their television sets awaiting the word. This has been a long, long, emotional ordeal for this city. And what will happen, we'll just have to see. As far as the police department is concerned, the police chief has put his force, his much beleaguered force in light of a lot of the testimony in this trial, on full tactical alert as of about 90 minutes ago. And what that simply means is that there will be an increased officer presence in this city. All shifts will be held over. Detectives are encouraged to wear their uniforms. And the police chief says he expects no wide-scale trouble, but warns about, as he calls them, crazies getting out of hand, whatever the verdict might be. There's an increased police presence outside what was the crime scene on Bundy and O.J. Simpson's house on Rockingham, as crowds gather and stop what they're doing just to be a part of this momentous event. Dan, we just have to see what will happen. If experience has taught us anything about life in Los Angeles, it is unpredictable. So let's just see what unfolds.
Bill Lagatuda. Let's go back to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz, who figures to lead the appeal should one be necessary for O.J. Simpson. And as say, if the case turns out, the jury says guilty, then O.J. Simpson will appeal, and Alan Dershowitz is likely to lead that appeal. Mr. Dershowitz, surely you've talked to the other defense attorneys since the jury was out, and even since they've been back. What worried you the most from the defense standpoint as the jury went into its deliberations?
Well, what worried me the most, of course, when I heard the news that they had come back with a verdict, was how quickly they had arrived at their verdict. We wanted them to look at all the evidence. We wanted them to assess the 50,000 pages of transcripts, the 8 months of testimony, and to look particularly at the weakness in the scientific case presented by the prosecution. And we're very concerned that they may have formed an opinion before the opportunity was provided to them to do so. So that was our biggest concern, but you know, we just don't know at this point. One thing I do want to say, as a member of the O.J. Simpson defense team, and as somebody who, if there were to be a conviction, would believe that O.J. Simpson was denied a fair trial, I would just urge everybody out there, please, to keep faith in the legal system, not to resort to any violence, not to take to the streets, but to trust the legal system. It's far from over. If there were to be a conviction in this case, we have appellate remedies, and let's work within the system. We can do it. There have been cases before in which there have been convictions and in which those convictions were reversed on appeal. It would not do O.J. Simpson any good. It would not do the community any good or anybody any good if they felt aggrieved by this verdict, if it were to be a verdict of guilty, for them to take to the streets. That would be exactly the wrong message. It would hurt Simpson. It would hurt the defense team. And I just urge everybody to please keep their calm no matter what. We are staying in control and on top of the situation, and there will be legal recourse. We're not through yet if there were to be a conviction in this case. If there's an acquittal, of course, my message is exactly the same thing for the other people.
Two quick questions, if I may. First of all, tell me why I should not, in listening to you, say to myself, Alan Dershowitz does not sound to me like he thinks the defense has won this case.
No, I'm a pessimist. As an appellate lawyer, I'm programmed to be a pessimist. My job from day one has been to prepare for the worst-case scenario. So I always think a conviction. From June of 1994, my job has been to worry. While the others were more cautiously optimistic, I was always more cautiously optimistic, not because I see the evidence any differently or because I have a different view of the issues in the case, but because as an appellate lawyer, my job is to prepare for the worst-case scenario. So we were up all night outlining possible issues on appeal. If there is an acquittal, that's wonderful. Our work will go into some file somewhere and maybe help some other lawyers, but we are ready for the eventuality of a possible conviction, and that's why you may hear pessimism in my voice. It's part of my professional training as an appellate lawyer.
Is part of your experience that people with money do get a fair shake in the criminal justice system?
No, I would put it differently. People without money get no shake in the criminal justice system. If O.J. Simpson had been some poor, destitute, unheard of person, he would not be able to have challenged the DNA. He would not have been able to get the Furman tapes. He would not have been able to get the experts that he got. The issue is not to bring people like Simpson down to a level where they can't possibly contest the evidence against them. It's to bring everybody up to a level where we have a level playing field, and we can really challenge the prosecution's case. If this case teaches anybody anything, regardless of what the verdict is, that is, you cannot always trust what the policeman says on the witness stand. You cannot always trust laboratories. There must be an adversarial process in which experts on both sides and people on both sides bring all the evidence to the attention of the jury and do not simply trust the way the prosecution has presented its case. This case, without regard to what the verdict is, proves that conclusion beyond any doubt. That's why we need more resources to help defendants who don't have O.J. Simpson's resources to help challenge cases brought against them. It helps the system, it helps justice, and it helps produce verdicts that are truthful and accurate and that the public trusts.
Appreciate you being with us, Alan Dershowitz, and we certainly want you to continue to be involved in our ongoing live coverage, and especially after the verdict comes in, we're eager to talk to you. One of your former students, Ted Wells, now one of the country's most distinguished criminal defense attorneys, is with us here. Ted, what about this business of being able to afford experts? Alan Dershowitz says, well, it isn't the case of those with money get a better shake out of the criminal justice system. It's those with no money get no shake. And he seemed to emphasize that a client such as O.J. Simpson, who has at the very minimum deep pockets, can afford the experts.
Well, that's right. And the real disparity reflects itself in the area of experts a lot more than in the area of lawyers. If a person is poor and qualifies for a public defender, in many states, the public defenders are pretty good lawyers. And if that person is involved in a high-profile case, that person has the chance, the opportunity to get perhaps the best public defender in the office. But that public defender will not have the resources to purchase the top experts in the country the way O.J. Simpson was able to do. So you might have some equality in terms of defense lawyers versus prosecutors, but there will be a great disparity in terms of the experts, and ultimately, in many cases, it is the experts that really determine how the facts are ultimately fleshed out.
Stephen Jones, you've defended clients with a lot of money, and you've defended clients in which you've been court-appointed. What about this business if you're a court-appointed attorney that while you have some resources, you don't have resources that can match the state?
I think that's true. In the federal system, I believe you can get those resources. For example, in the Oklahoma City bombing case, if we need those resources, we file a motion under seal, that is to say only the judge sees it, and we make a showing, and uniformly the judge has given us the expert assistance we need. In state court, though, Dan, that's a fairly recent phenomenon. It goes back to a case, incidentally, that arose in Oklahoma, very near my hometown. The case is Ake versus Oklahoma, in which, for the first time, the U.S. Supreme Court said that a defendant who is an indigent with court-appointed counsel is entitled to have experts, if there is a need, furnished at expense to the state. But to be frank with you, many state judges are still very cautious and conservative about giving that assistance. And then, of course, you've got to find those experts who are willing to be paid at those rates. So it's not an easy task. It's better in federal court, and state court still needs improvement.
I know that you practice in both civil court and criminal court, but let's discuss just very briefly a forgotten aspect to this case, that the family of Ron Goldman has filed a civil suit against O.J. Simpson, it's my understanding. How will this verdict affect that, or will it?
Well, it will have an impact on it. If the verdict is guilty against Mr. Simpson, then there will never be a civil trial, because for all practical purposes, collateral estoppel, a doctrine that lawyers know, would hold that the issue has already been litigated and Mr. Simpson is responsible. But the reverse is not true. If Mr. Simpson is found not guilty in the Goldman homicide, that does not preclude a trial, because the standard of proof for a conviction is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. For a civil judgment, it is much less. So in this case, it is truly for the defendant, heads the other side wins, tails I lose, if it's a guilty verdict.
Very quickly, Ted, because we need to take a break here. Can you think of very many cases in which a defendant was found not guilty in the criminal case and then the civil case went against him for big money?
Actually, I have. There are situations where the civil plaintiffs will be able to craft a case that will be so different, and then what happens, the defendant turns out, and he testifies, for example, in the civil case, whereas he did not in the criminal case. And you can have different results, and a lot of this becomes very technical because it depends on how you apply this complicated concept of collateral estoppel, which is really beyond the amount of time we have.
Well, certainly beyond my comprehension, no matter if we had the time. We are awaiting the O.J. Simpson verdict in the criminal phase of his case. Be coming up in about 19 minutes now. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with our continuing live coverage from CBS News.
I'm using Pam, the only leading all-natural cooking spray to cook a low-fat feast. Pam lets the natural flavors come through, so nothing comes between you and the taste of your food. Pam.
Please pass the all-fruit.
Polaner all-fruit is real fruit, sweetened only with fruit juice.
Would you please pass the jelly?
You'll call it delicious, you'll call it remarkable, but please, don't dare call it jelly.
I remember when the only choice was aspirin. Next came Tylenol, but couldn't always handle all my tough headache pain. And now there's Aleve. But if pain comes back once you've taken it, you could be in pain hours before you can take more. No thanks.
For me, the best choice is Advil.
I can take Advil the way I want to.
Advil contains the #1 doctor-prescribed pain reliever in its class in non-prescription strength.
Nothing is proven to work better or last longer than Advil. Nothing.
Advanced medicine for pain.
Centrum? I just feel better knowing I'm taking it.
Centrum's complete. Every time a vitamin makes news, I check my Centrum label, and Centrum's got it.
It's Centrum's commitment to ongoing research that ensures you always get the best nutritional support. A more advanced multivitamin. Centrum, always more complete than any leading brand.
The Centrum people thought of everything.
Like they say, from A to zinc.
Centrum makes a science of being more complete.
It's Visine season. Time for red, irritated eyes. Time for Visine, the only eye drop recommended by pharmacists 4-to-1 over any other brand. So effective, it gives you 100% of the relief you need. Visine, it gets the red out.
Where do germs live that surround your gums and teeth? Take the plaque scratch test to find out. We won't look. That film is plaque. To remove it and the germs, get this. Advanced formula plaques. Remove more plaque.
An example of just how many Americans are watching this verdict this afternoon. Rita Braver standing by at the White House. Rita, just by chance, do you know what the president's doing right now?
Well, as a matter of fact, I think Dan's showing that there is no part of the country that is immune from this fascination with the Simpson case. Earlier today, White House Press Secretary Mike McCurry said that the president does plan to watch the verdict as it comes in. The president is also expected to issue some kind of statement after the verdict, I think because the White House really believes that Americans want to hear from their president at times like this. And the president this morning was briefed by his chief of staff, Leon Panetta, on the federal contingency planning that is being done just in case there could be some kind of civil unrest in response to this verdict. Now, they are stressing here over and over again that they hope that there is no response needed, that they are not expecting one, but as one person said to me today, they just want to be sure that all of the bases are covered. Now, what does the president himself think about this case? Well, we don't really know a lot, but he has said that this should not be considered really a comment on the American justice system because the facts in this case are so unusual. He has also said that he hopes it will not be seen as a comment on the broader racial issues in this country. I'm afraid that that is a hope that might not be fulfilled. And I also want to mention, just in terms of how seriously Washington, the political center, is taking this, I was just told by a Washington Post reporter that the paper is going to be putting out a special edition today, something very unusual, Dan.
Rita Braver at the White House. Let's show you what's happening outside the courtroom in Los Angeles as the crowd continues to grow in size. We're told that up and down the line and through the depths of the ranks there that it has been an exceptionally well-behaved crowd up to now. This crowd began gathering well before sunup this morning. People wanting to get just the right position as they saw it for the verdict, which will now be coming up in about 14 minutes. To review very quickly, in case you've been out of town or out of the country, it's hard to imagine someone in the country who wouldn't know it, but the jury came back very quickly yesterday, told the judge they'd reached a verdict. It was the judge's decision to leave the verdict in a safe overnight and have it opened today at 1 o'clock Eastern time, 10 o'clock Los Angeles time, and that will be happening in about 12, 13, 14 minutes from now. Let's talk about how much a role race played in this trial. You heard Rita Braver say that President Clinton is eager not to have the trial discussed in the context of race. But realistically, well, let's don't speculate about it. If the past is prologue, everybody's going to discuss the possible racial dynamic in this trial. Here's our roundtable of the Los Angeles residents. Karen Grigsby Bates is a writer for the Los Angeles Times opinion page. She's going to help us along the way after we know what the verdict is. Bill Handel is a radio talk show host who's been broadcasting. Grigsby Bates is a writer for the Los Angeles Times opinion page. I said that. And Handel being this radio talk show host. Gloria Molina is a member of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. Earl Hutchinson is a lecturer and writer. Now, what about the race issue? How is it playing in Los Angeles?
Are you talking to all of us?
Simultaneously?
Anyone speak up. Let's go left to right.
All right, and that's what?
Your left,
is that
our
our left? Your right, Dan. Your left.
You start off.
Well, let me say.
I'll start.
All right, let me say this.
Go ahead, Earl. No, please. I will acquiesce to you.
All right, one thing I've been concerned about right from the beginning is many people have said race won't play a part in the case. I said from day one, you're kidding yourself, you're being very naive, race will play a part in it. How could it not be? You have a predominantly African-American jury, you have a celebrated defendant, African-American, and certainly you have a very prominent African-American attorney who is the defense attorney here and is a lead counsel in the case. The other thing that we had to look at is the way the media spun it right from the beginning. Right from the beginning, the polls showed that there was a huge disparity in how African Americans saw this case and how many whites saw the case. Another problem that came up right away is the criminal justice system. Many African Americans are deeply suspicious of the racism within the system, what they perceive the injustice, misconduct on the part of the police, and as certainly we know, a major part of the case has been Mark Furman and certainly the Los Angeles Police Department. So when you throw all these ingredients together, we have to ask the question and be realistic about it. How could race not play a part in it? It did from the beginning, and it will at the end. However, I will caution one thing. Even though it did overlay the case in a very dramatic way, I think the other thing we have to be mindful of, it may not, and this may be the surprise, it may not play a part, ironically, in the final decision.
I disagree with that. I think race is going to play an enormous part in this decision for a couple of reasons. First of all, well, first of all, I have to tell you, my program director would kill me if I didn't give the station, my station. So I'm at KFI AM 640. I apologize, Dan. I have to have a job tomorrow.
No apology necessary.
All right, thank you. Johnny Cochran made this a race issue. After saying, I'm not going to play the race card, he made it a race card. And he made the jury play into the race. And he effectively told 9 members of that jury, the black jury, the 9 members of the jury, saying, if you don't acquit, you are part of this cover-up. You are part of this racist police force. You are as guilty as they are. And I found that so offensive, and I imagine the jury probably did too. If race is part of it, and I think Johnny Cochran made this a race issue, it's going to backfire on him. And the other situation, as Earl said, this is LAPD. This is a racist police force, isn't it? What's astounding, if you look at the history of O.J. Simpson in the LAPD, not only is no racism involved, this is a police force that cherished this guy, that protected this man, that went out 9 times and never arrested him, that covered up for him, that when they finally tried to arrest him, or were going to arrest him after Nicole in 1989, came bruised and bloody out of the house. And Officer Edwards says, I have to arrest you, O.J. He said, let me get changed, jumps in his car, and then splits and goes down the street. Now, if you or I tried that, you tell me how quickly the police would go chasing after us. Race is nothing but this case.
Well, race was always involved in this case, though, Dan. I mean, it was involved in it in the beginning, and one of the interesting schisms I noticed as a journalist moving around in both sides of the community is that when black journalists, and I'm not saying members of the black press, I'm saying black members of the mainstream press, tried to bring this up in the beginning with editors and in newsrooms, they were told, no, you're seeing this through a racial prism. This is an instance of celebrity, high-profile trial. This is an instance of spousal abuse. This is, sort of glamour that's drawing people into this. And newsrooms were very uneasy to tackle the racial issue of it head-on. Not having done that, I think it sort of metastasized into something larger than it needed to have been, because people were very leery about handling it from the beginning.
Well, I think as well that race did play a very significant part in this race. in this whole trial. But the situation here is that we also have a case that was presented by the prosecution that I think was so very effective that it's going to overcome all of the racial overtones that this case has had. I really believe that Marcia Clark and her team did an outstanding job and presented evidence that's going to be very effective to render a guilty verdict in this case.
And when the jurors vote one way or the other, or they have voted, but I think that their deliberations were not based as black jurors with a black defendant, because if you talk to most black prosecutors, they will tell you every day of the year, black juries put black defendants away. It's not, I can't do this to another black person. I think if there's reservation here, that there's probably some suspicion by the jury that there may be things that it doesn't know. And does this enter into how they make their decision in the end? I mean, we're going to have to wait and find out.
And I think something else, too, that is really insulting, and I've said this from the beginning, just to assume that because you have a predominantly black jury, that they think with one racial mind. We don't know how they think. And I think the important thing to remember is that you have other variables, too. For example, different age groups, different gender groups, obviously, different religious persuasions. I mean, it cuts across a lot, class, it cuts across a lot of lines. So just simplistically to say, they're going to do this because O.J. Simpson is black and because they're black, I think badly misses the point and does a disservice as an insulting to African Americans.
We're going to be back with you all. Excuse me one moment. I'm very sorry to interrupt here, but we're getting close to verdict time. The point is that we're going to come back after the verdict has been announced and come back and pick up where we left off that conversation. In the meantime, I want to go quickly to Laurie Levinson, who's watched this trial from the very beginning, even from before the trial got underway, and has been often in the courtroom itself. Laurie, what about the race card and how the defense tried to use it, if indeed you agree they did try to use it?
Well, I think the defense did try to use it, but don't forget there were always two trials in this case, one in the courtroom and one out of the courtroom. And the race card was used a lot more out of the courtroom until Johnny Cochran's closing argument. And then it made its way in. And I agree with one of your panelists who said maybe it backfired at that point, or maybe the jurors said, yes, that's what we're waiting for. I think race is an issue, but more importantly, the entire juror's background and life experience. That's really the issue.
Jerry Ledford, I noticed you were shaking your head no, no, no. As a defense attorney, what's your take on that?
You know, I think that the defense had an absolute right, indeed a duty, to get into this area because, after all, they had witnesses coming to them like Kathleen Bell and the fellow named Hodge, who was arrested by Furman, who were telling them about the racist attitudes of this cop. And then, lo and behold, on cross-examination, when he denied any conversations with these people, and they believed these people, they had a right to probe further, and there came the, the tapes that showed he was a racist. They had an absolute right to pursue this issue. What is really interesting about it is the percentages of black Americans and white Americans who disagree so violently over the facts of this case. And that is the real educational value of the television in the courtroom in this particular instance, because we now have an understanding of the different perceptions of police that both communities have.
Ruth Jones, I want to ask you very quickly, a former prosecutor now teaching law students at Fordham. There is all over the country, regardless of the demographic, but I think it's fair to say it runs particularly strong among whites in this country, that black juries, quote-unquote black juries, are reluctant to convict black defendants. Does the record reflect that?
No, it certainly doesn't. In fact, just the opposite. And one of the reasons I think that black jurors are willing to think about convicting black defendants is because often they are the victims of crime. They are the ones whose communities are most harmed by criminal conduct. And I think it's really disturbing to me to hear this frequently called the race card, as if there is no rational relationship between the issue of race and the defense case. Race is brought up, whether we want to believe it or not, as a motive for police lying and planting evidence. The question is whether that occurred in this case. But certainly I believe it is an issue in this case, and it will depend on how the jury viewed it.
Ted Wells, your experience as a defense attorney of African-American heritage, you've appeared among many juries of various makeups. Does your experience indicate to you candidly that, yes, at least some of the time, black jurors tend to go with a black defendant?
No. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I've tried a lot of cases in Washington, D.C. where the jurors are predominantly black, and in many cases the defendants are black, and the conviction rate in the courts of Washington, D.C. are the same as they are in the rest of the country, a little over 90%. And I agree with Ruth Jones. I think the suggestion that Johnny Cochran in some way has done something improper or has played some type of illegitimate race card, those suggestions are just plain wrong. The bottom line is Mark Furman is the person who injected race into this case. Mark Furman is a racist police officer. He was in the middle of this investigation. And I think what really distinguishes how black citizens see this case versus whites is black citizens have come up in an environment where we know the Mark Furmans are not the exception. He's not just one isolated person, that these police departments do have problems, and black jurors, without question, are more amenable, more receptive to those types of arguments. But the argument is a legitimate argument, and Johnny Cochran and the defense proved, regardless of the verdict today, that Mark Furman was right in the middle of this case, and Mark Furman is a racist, and it wasn't any game that they were playing.
Let's bring you up to date on what's happening in the courtroom itself. The jury is not yet inside the courtroom. However, the attorneys from both sides are beginning to gather in front of the judge's bench. Are they nervous? Of course they're nervous. You can't go through a trial, any trial, without being nervous about it if you're an attorney on either side, to say nothing, a defendant in a case. But particularly in a long trial such as this one, the attorneys certainly can be forgiven. If they're fidgeting a bit, we can't show them to you in the courtroom because that one shot on the Great Seal of California is all we get until the judge enters the room. Now, outside the courthouse, as we're only minutes away from the verdict now, you saw the crowds, very peaceful and quiet, practically no incidents of any difficulty with this very large crowd that's been building and building out there near where Bill Lagatuda is. Bill?
Dan, you're looking at an aerial view, I believe, of what of the street in front of the courthouse, behind which we euphemistically refer to as Camp OJ, which is where the media center of the world is right now. All of the cameras from across the globe focused on this city of Los Angeles, and the crowd out front is like everyone around the world waiting anxiously, nervously perhaps, for this verdict. And I think that one of the things the police chief was talking about when he announced that he was putting his squad on full tactical alert was the media itself. Let's face it, the eyes of the world are here on Los Angeles, and if someone has a radical or perhaps a violent point of view, it's not going to be that difficult for him or her to seek out a camera, and perhaps things could grow worse from there. Of course, everyone is hoping that beside what many expect to be spontaneous outpourings of emotion in small doses, that the biggest thing we'll get from Los Angeles is a giant sense of relief that what this city's been through in the past year and a half, nearly 2 years, is just about to come to an end, Dan. And as you mentioned, so far, behind me, the courthouse, out in front where thousands have gathered, there's been no problem. People are just waiting for the word.
Laurie Levinson, what can the judge do? What is he expected to do to try to keep order in the courtroom, especially with this kind of trial? There very often are emotional outbursts on all sides.
Well, I think the first thing the judge will do is have his bailiffs warn everybody that there should be no emotional outcry, no matter what the verdict is. And don't worry about Judge Ito. He is pretty good at using his bailiffs to keep that type of control. There's very limited access to his courtroom. There are actually 2 wire detectors, I should say metal detectors, for people to go through. So I think the courthouse itself is safe. The police outside are keeping good control. And by and large, people don't want trouble, and that's the main factor.
Jerry Lefcourt, in the state of New York, where you practiced practically every state, but especially in New York, is it your judgment that if a jury had brought in a verdict, as this one did, in the afternoon, that the judge would have kept it sealed overnight and waited until the next day to announce it?
No, it's the usual practice to have the lawyers really remain in the courthouse and not even leave. And so that you can call everybody together very quickly, open that envelope. I mean, why would you want to keep an innocent man another day in jail? It really is outrageous. On the other hand, obviously in California, they had people all over the state, and they wanted to notify the police just in case there was a conviction, I think, to make the proper preparations and to have it come during the day in the event that there's any outbursts. I don't think there will be, but I think that that was probably what was motivating the judge.
I'm aware that some of our stations are now joining us up and down the line, and our audience has been out doing other things, and some of it is now coming to the television set. Yes, it is 1 o'clock. No, we do not have the verdict open. We're expecting that to happen in a matter of minutes. The attorneys are gathering inside the courtroom in front of that great seal of California, and Judge Ito, we expect, will come in shortly. Once the judge is in his seat, the attorneys will settle down, and the judge will ask that the jury be brought in, and we will have the verdict. In the meantime, Ted Wells, were you surprised that the judge, who looked a little surprised, Judge Ito, has, as good judges do, has a good poker face, but he looked a little surprised when the jury foreman said, we have a verdict, and indicated to him. Were you surprised that he kept it overnight rather than having it opened right then and there, or within at least a couple of hours?
I was very surprised. I think most judges would have taken the verdict after 3 or 4 hours of time given to let the other lawyers return to the courtroom. The real problem you might encounter by waiting until overnight is that one or more jurors might change his or her mind. And if we get into the court today and somebody stands up and says, I slept on it and I haven't changed.
In the Simpson matter, Mr. Simpson is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Kardashian, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Blazier. People are represented by Ms. Clark, Mr. Darden, and Mr. Hodgman. The jury is not present. Good morning, counsel. All right, the record should reflect that earlier this morning at 9 o'clock, the court met informally with counsel here in the courtroom, because there are too many lawyers to go into chambers this morning, for the purposes of discussing notifications to the jurors regarding their rights of privacy and the interest of the news media to interview them or speak to them following the delivery of the verdict in court here today. The court distributed to the parties copies of the questionnaire that has been distributed to the jurors, and also the notice to them regarding confidentiality under 237 of the Code of Civil Procedure. And those 2 questionnaires have been returned by the jurors. They have uniformly indicated their desire that their private information will remain confidential. They have also indicated to the court unanimously a desire not to speak to the attorneys after the conclusion of the trial, and not to speak with the news media either. All right, counsel, is there anything else we need to take up before I invite the jurors to join us? All right, Deputy Trower, let's have the jurors, please.
As the jury comes in the room, among the murmurs are that when a jury says it doesn't want to speak to the attorneys, that sometimes is a tip that it might be a conviction. Attorneys who've gone through these kinds of cases naturally are going to pick up on everything they see and hear, and one of the things they've heard here is the judge saying the jury doesn't want to speak to Johnny Cochran, or for that matter, any of the attorneys. But it should be only a few minutes now until we know what the verdict is going to be. You heard the judge say that he instructed the bailiffs to keep order in the courtroom. Judge Ito this morning has a heavy responsibility. That is that once this verdict is read, to try to in every way have his court permeated with a sense of order and justice. Jury left court.
It really makes one feel when the jurors say they don't want to speak to any of the lawyers, that they're saying they don't want to speak to Johnny Cochran, that he was the one who called on them to really play the race card for those African-American jurors to stand up and end racism in the LAPD. And when they're saying they don't want to talk about it, and in light of the quick verdict after only Alan Park's direct testimony, they didn't want to hear the cross, and in light of the fact that they didn't want to look at O.J. Simpson, this is what you wonder.
And the record should reflect that we have now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel and our alternates. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you, do you have the envelope with the sealed verdict forms, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, would you give those to Deputy Trower? And would you return those to our 4-person juror number 1? All right, Madam 4-person, would you please open the envelope and check the condition of the verdict forms? All right, Madam Foreperson, you've had the opportunity to review the verdict forms.
Yes.
Are they the same forms that you signed, and are they in order?
Yes, they are.
All right, would you hand those, please, to Deputy Trevor? And you have signed and dated those verdict forms indicating the jury's verdict?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen and of the jury, I'm going to ask that you carefully listen to the verdicts as they are being read by the clerk, Mrs. Robertson. As after the verdicts have been read, you will be asked if these are your verdicts. And I would caution the audience during the course of the reading of these verdicts to remain calm, and that if there is any disruption during the reading of the verdicts, the bailiffs will have the obligation to remove any persons disrupting these proceedings. All right, Mrs. Robertson. All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. Superior Court of the State of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the State of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find a special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, has in this case been convicted of at least 1 crime of murder of the first degree and 1 or more crimes of murder of the first or second degree to be not true. Signed this 2nd day of October 1995, Juror 230. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes. All right, counsel, Mr. Simpson, would you be seated, please? Let's have it quiet in the courtroom, please. All right, Mrs. Robertson, would you please poll the jurors?
Poll the jury. Juror number 1, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 2, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 3, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 4, as to count 1, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 5, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 6, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 7, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 8, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 9, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror number 10, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 11, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Juror number 12, as to count 1, is this your verdict? Count 2. Juror number 1 is to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 2 is to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 3 as to count 2. Is this your verdict? Juror number 4 as to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 5 is to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 6 is to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 7 as to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 8 as to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 9 as to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 10 as to count 2. Is this your verdict? Juror number 11 as to count 2. Is this your verdict? Juror number 12 as to count 2. Is this your verdict? Inspector.
All right, the clerk is directed to record the verdicts as read. The parties agree to waive reading of the verdicts as recorded. Mr. Cochran, do you waive reading of the verdicts as recorded?
Yes, we do.
Ms. Clark, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to at this time take this opportunity to publicly thank you for the service that you've given to us. The burdens that we've placed upon you were enormous, and words can't begin to express the debt that we owe to you for the time and patience and exertion that you've given to us during the course of this case. I will have an opportunity to meet with you privately later, and I'll give you my private comments when we have a chance to meet. I want to caution you at this time that there is, as you know, intense media interest in this case. The news media will probably seek you out at your home or at your place of business. And I would implore that the news media act responsibly to avoid harassing you or identifying you without your consent or otherwise causing you concern. Whether you wish to cooperate with the news media is, of course, entirely up to you. However, I must warn you to expect the worst as far as that is concerned. We want to, I know I share with you in expressing our thanks to the bailiffs from the Sheriff's Department, to our court reporters, Ms. Foxham and Ms. Olson, to the research attorney, John Byrne, who's assisted us, our Pepperdine law clerks, Mr. Golub and Ms. Carswell, our media liaison, Jerry Ann Hazlett, and her staff, and of course the jury commissioner, Gloria Gomez, and her staff. All right, counsel, is there anything we need to take up before we excuse the jurors? Mr. Cochran?
One last time.
The jury has spoken. The verdict is not guilty. O.J. Simpson will walk from this courtroom a free man.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am now going to excuse you from further service on this case. As you know, this does absolve you from your vows of silence. You may take with you your juror notebooks as you have requested, and we'll be chatting with you shortly. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you all later. All right. Everybody have a seat, please.
Have a seat, please.
All right, Ms. Clark, Mr. Cochran, anything else we need to take up? Ms. Clark? All right, the defendant having been acquitted of both charges, he is ordered transported to an appropriate sheriff's facility and released forthwith. All right, we'll stand in recess.
Please clear the floor.
O.J. Simpson, not guilty.